Chapter 8:16. Young E and Murphy went backstage to prepare. On the sofa in the middle of the stage, Shishi was sitting face to face with Ms. Prada. The little girl was not as reserved as she was when she first arrived. She sat on the sofa, and her big obsidian-like eyes were lively. Like an ordinary child, her attention was drifting. She looked away for a while, then back to Prada. "Okay, let's talk about something." Prada looked at the camera and pretended to be helpless. "Cece, how about we talk about you?" "Okay." She happily shook her little butt on the sofa. "How old are you this year?" Prada tried to find an angle to cut into the topic. "I'm 6 years old." It was not Shishi's style to answer the question so simply. She paused and said, "I was only 5 years old, but I became 6 years old after my birthday last month." "Your birthday? In the United States?" Prada asked with a smile. "How did you feel about your birthday in the United States?" She actually wanted to ask about the difference between Shishi's birthday in China and the United States, but how could Shishi understand the deeper meaning? Shishi thought about what happened on her birthday and smiled. "I was so happy, Ms. Prada. I want to tell you. My papa gave me a fawn, and I named it Hua Hua. It means fresh flowers." "Really? Your birthday present is a fawn? A real fawn? Or is it the kind of toy I'm thinking of?" Prada asked with some surprise. "It's real, and it's so beautiful. But it's also very pitiful. It lost Papa and Mom, and then it was bitten by a big bad wolf. But Ms. Prada, don't worry. Papa and I took it to the vet, and Grandpa Lister has already cured it." She said happily. The audience applauded with appreciation. "I understand. You said that you saved a fawn that was bitten by a wolf, right?" Prada asked. "Yes, my papa let it live next to Little White. Then, Ms. Prada, I clean the room for it every day. It's just that I won't be at home these few days, so Greg will help me clean it. Hua Hua likes him too." Cece started talking, and a series of messages popped out. "Wait a minute, what's Little White? Another fawn?" Prada found herself at a loss for words. The audience laughed. "No, Little White is a pony my grandfather gave me. It's super cute." She said regretfully, "But I don't have their photos, or I could show them to you." "Thank you, child." Prada didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He pretended to sigh and said, "Now we know that you have a pony and a deer as pets. God, your experience is really extraordinary. There are not many children who have a pony and a deer as pets." "They're not my pets." She, on the other hand, understood the concept of the word. She blinked and explained to Prada seriously, "Hua Hua and Xiao Bai are my friends." "Okay. Friend, I'm glad to hear that." Prada gave a thumbs up. "Then, Papa said that after we go back to China, Grandpa will let Hua Hua go back to the forest because that's her home. She can also find her mom there." She said sincerely. "That's great, your idea is great. I think Hua Hua will definitely find her mother." Prada finally re-evaluated her opinion of Shi. She felt that Shi was not only a child, but also a very kind person. She praised, "Cece, you're a good child. Really, I like your love for animals. Hey, I want to hug you. Can I hug you?" Prada opened her arms lovingly. She blinked her big eyes. Although she could not understand why Prada suddenly wanted to hug her, she actually liked this gentle and kind black lady. She smiled sweetly and went into her arms. Prada hugged the little girl gently. After letting go, she said softly, "Cece, you have a kind heart. Please always remember to be sincere to people and to the world, okay?" She looked into Prada's eyes and nodded her little head in confusion. "Okay, let's enjoy your mother's singing and your father's performance together." Prada had been doing shows for decades and had a good grasp of the rhythm. She smiled and pulled Shi to sit on the sofa on her side. She then pointed to the small stage next to them. The curtains of the small stage were pulled open. Yang Yi sat in front of a piano, while Murphy lowered her head slightly and held the microphone and the piano with both hands. Before the curtains were completely pulled open, neither of them moved. It was as if they were frozen in time. There was already some applause from the audience. When an expert made a move, it was obvious whether he was good or not. Although Murphy had not sung live for a long time, when she stood on the stage, even if her head was lowered, she gave off a deep aura that controlled the whole scene. The audience could not help but look forward to it. In contrast, Yang Yi was much more low-key. He seemed to be hiding behind the scenes, giving all the light to Murphy. Murphy would not let him down. When the curtains were completely pulled open, Yang Yi raised his hand and started to play. The prelude was only a few seconds, and it was a single note that could firmly affect people's hearts. It was like a melodious bell, knocking on people's eardrums. Then, Murphy raised her head. Her eyes were calm. She opened her mouth and sang, "Shine Like a Diamond." Mo Fei's soulful and ethereal singing immediately made everyone's attention. The camera switched to Prada, who was on the other side of the sofa, and her face was full of surprise. This was not an act. It was Prada's first time hearing Murphy sing. However, she had been in the entertainment industry for so many years. She could completely judge that Murphy's voice was very recognizable and that this song contained a myriad of changes, so she could not help but show a surprised expression. This was just the beginning. Found in the light, so beautiful and I ended this and happy. Were like diamonds in the eye. As if I'd found a lighthouse in the middle of the sea, I choose to live a happy life. Just you and me, we're like diamonds in the sky. It was completely different from the first two lines. Although Yang Yi was still accompanied by a single note, Murphy's voice was like a gentle breeze in the early morning. It was as if she was soaring on the clouds in the boundless sky. The light and powerful voice was full of rhythm, and people could not help but be intoxicated. Just like the unconstrained imagery and artistic conception given by the lyrics, people's thoughts seemed to be brought to the sky by Murphy's voice. At that moment, the enthusiasm of the audience was ignited. Although they did not make a sound to affect Murphy's singing, everyone stared at the inconspicuous Chinese on the stage. All their attention was attracted by her peerless voice. Where did this person come from? Perhaps it was because they were ignorant of other countries, or perhaps it was because they subconsciously looked down on Asians. When Prada mentioned the sales of Murphy's records, they did not think much of it. But now, they seemed to have forgotten their previous prejudice and previous memories. There was only one thought in their minds. Where did Prada find this person? She was singing like a superstar. As the lyrics said, shining like a diamond. The usually inconspicuous Murphy was like a diamond standing on the stage. No one could ignore her brilliance. Not to mention the audience, even Prada herself was stunned by Murphy's series of effortless high notes. Especially in the last part of the song, I Saw the Life Inside Your Eyes, and the first few verses, Mo Fei sang the high notes here very well. The audience could not tell the difference because Murphy sang very freely and did not seem to use any effort at all. Maybe they just thought that the high notes here were very nice, and Mo Fei's singing also had a little natural flirtation, which made people feel intoxicated listening to it. But Prada knew music. She knew that if it were an ordinary singer here, they would probably not be able to hang on, let alone sing so many high notes. Murphy was able to control them so freely. It was as if she was the high notes themselves. Even that lingering aura was definitely not something an ordinary singer could compare to. No wonder Yang Yi said that his wife's singing was much better than his. Prada finally understood that Murphy's singing was at the level of a monster. Chapter 8:17. After the song Diamonds was sung, the 200 to 300 audience members who were impressed by Murphy's singing started applauding. Even Prada could not help but stand up and applaud Murphy. She knew better than the audience how capable Murphy was. She also stood up happily when she saw that. She stood beside Prada and clapped her little hands excitedly. She could understand the meaning of everyone's applause, so the little girl was also proud of her mother. In contrast, Murphy's reaction was calmer. She had received countless praises like that. It was only because she had been away from the stage for too long. Apart from the small test of Jixin interview, Murphy had not enjoyed a real stage for more than a year. Now that she had sung a song, it was considered satisfying. When Murphy and Yang Yi walked down the stage hand in hand, the corners of her mouth were still filled with a joyful smile. Back to the interview, Prada chatted a lot with Murphy. She was full of praises and asked about Murphy's future development plans. Will you choose to develop in the United States in the future? I have to say, with the quality of your song just now, there will be countless agencies that want to recruit you, Prada said. Murphy and Yang Yi had discussed this issue before. She said calmly, in fact, there won't be much difference between the past and the future. We'll still stay in China, but Yang Yi has already recruited a group of agents in the United States to help arrange some of our music releases and other work in the United States. So even if we stay in China, we'll strive to compose and sing more good English songs. We won't disappoint our fans. Prada felt a little regretful. However, with her rich experience, she could tell that the couple were not ordinary small-time artists. Not only were they talented, but they were also very rich. Their choice could not be measured from the perspective of ordinary people. Prada was a person who knew how to chat and listen well. As the show progressed, Prada used the opportunity to guide Yang Yi and Murphy to explain the situation of the Chinese entertainment industry to many curious American audiences. Of course, Yang Yi and Murphy also chose the good things to talk about. The audience listened with great interest. They were usually unwilling to understand the development of other countries, but it was an eye-opener for them. They realized that there were other worlds that were as exciting as them outside the United States. Before the talk show ended, Prada still led the topic back to Shi. From her father, she learned that Shi was not only a smart and cute girl, but she was also a good little actress. Is this true? You've played many interesting roles? Prada asked in surprise. It's true. She had been holding back for a long time. She could finally not just sit between her parents and act as a cute mascot. The little girl happily told Ms. Prada about the role she had played. I played a girl who didn't like to talk. You played a girl who didn't like to talk? Prada asked solemnly. She even looked at the audience and the camera with a blank face. The audience laughed. They all knew how talkative she was. She did not seem like an introverted child at all. Yes. She didn't know how to laugh or talk, but she was also a good child. She was very obedient and would protect the injured adult. She tried her best to explain to Prada that adult was played by my papa. The audience laughed even louder. Yang Yi smiled helplessly at the side. He touched Shi's little head lovingly and explained to Prada, Shi is right. The character she played at that time had a certain degree of autism. I believe you must have played her very well because you are also very kind. Prada smiled and said to Shi, what other roles have you played? There was also an ugly duckling. The other small animals didn't like it, Shi said. An ugly duckling? Prada was confused again. Why was she playing an animal again? This is not a movie, but a play she acted in, Yang Yi explained. Shi looked at her father. As if she had received a hint, she nodded her little head seriously and said, Yes, this is a play. I acted in it with many of my classmates. She also told Prada the story of the ugly duckling very enthusiastically. She even dragged Prada and told her that in the end, the ugly duckling turned into a white swan. Fortunately, Prada was very patient and cooperated with her to express her surprise. This made Shi very happy, and she felt that she had shared her happiness with Prada. I also acted as a dancing pig. She was still a little unsatisfied. Prada smiled. She found an opportunity and said to Shi, I heard from your parents that you are also a good dancer. And you came today to teach me how to dance, right? She was a little embarrassed at this time. She twisted her little body, hugged her father's hand, and nodded shyly. Before she came, her parents told her that she was going to show a dance that she had learned in her mother's dance studio. She, who had a strong desire to perform, agreed readily. However, now that there were so many people in the audience, the little girl was a little nervous. Talking was one thing, dancing was another. After all, she was a child. Dancing in front of so many strangers, she would still be nervous. Just like when she acted as the ugly duckling and the pig. Are you shy? This is a little surprising to me. But don't be shy. Auntie Prada will dance with you. You see, my dance is so bad. Everyone will give me a warm round of applause. Prada stood up with a smile and did a dance that was not like her. Prada, who was in her 50s, was naturally out of shape, but she did not care about her comical appearance at all. She deliberately did this to ease she's nervousness. The audience laughed and gave a warm round of applause very cooperatively. Ms. Prada, you didn't dance badly. Don't think like that. My papa said that if you work hard, you will be great. When she heard Prada say that she had chosen poorly, she was worried that Prada would not dare to dance again. When Prada came over, the little girl stood up and took her hand, comforting her softly. Prada hugged she and said with a smile, "Thank you. Baby, this is the best encouragement I have ever heard. Okay. Let's dance." Prada asked people to remove the sofa. Young E and Murphy stood aside. She clapped her hands and said to she enthusiastically, "Baby, do you want to teach me how to dance first? Or do you want to show us first?" Her nervousness was relieved. She blinked. She did not know how to choose, but she liked to follow the pattern that her father had taught her and her mother. Then I want to demonstrate it first. Is that okay? Ms. Prada? Of course. Please ask the sound engineer to play the music. This is the dance music that your father made himself. Prada could not help but exclaim again. Prada had listened to the song before the program was recorded. The beauty of the song was indescribable. But what amazed Prada more was the electronic music arrangement, which subverted her previous understanding of Yang Yi. Yang Yi's previous songs were either played on the guitar or the piano. Chapter 8:18. Although she's nervousness had been relieved a little, when her parents and Ms. Prada stepped aside and left her alone on the stage in front of 200 to 300 audience members, the little girl became nervous again. Papa. She was nervous and thought of her father. She turned her head to look at her father, her small eyes looking a little helpless. In fact, her father was not far away, just a few meters below the stage, but the difference between the center of the spotlight and the outside of the spotlight increased the sense of distance. Come on. Yang E gave she a thumbs up to encourage her. At this time, Prada was still the experienced one. She borrowed a baseball cap from a little girl in the audience, adjusted the elastic, and handed it to she. She smiled and said to she, "This is a very useful experience. Your hair is longer, so when you wear the cap and dance, it won't be scattered easily. Also, let me see. Oh, what a cool little girl." She smiled shyly at her, and the little girl's mood improved again after being praised. The music finally started. First there was a rhythmic jazz drum sound, and then there was a very exotic ethnic drum sound mixed in. Then there was a new sound mixed in. However, although there were more and more instruments, the overall melody was not messy, and it maintained a lively rhythm, which made the audience feel like they were swaying with it. If there were people from Yang Yi's previous world present, they would definitely be able to identify the source of this dance music from the prelude alone. Yes, it was the brainwashing dance song, Seve, which sang, "Sabonin kills the black chicken." Today, she was going to perform the shuffle dance with this accompaniment, which was popular all over the world in Yang Yi's previous world. The reason why this dance was so popular was that it was not too difficult, and it was light and lively. Yang Yi took it out in Murphy's dance studio, and it soon won the favor of Murphy and she. Murphy danced the best, and she soon learned from Yang Yi, and surpassed him. She was not bad either. The little girl liked this dance the most, and she was not tired of dancing every day. Although the little girl did not dance very well in the beginning, after playing for so long, she had become a skilled Seve shuffle dancer. Although she was a little nervous at the beginning, when the music started, the little girl subconsciously put her feet away and got into the mood. She's hands were in front of her body, and her head was slightly lowered. She was as cool as some girls who were dancing, and her body gently twisted with the rhythm of the music. But it was not big, but it was full of rhythm. Wow! Prada, who was standing at the side of the stage, could not help but exclaim at the camera. Of course, she was still a little nervous. When the sound of the fourth instrument mixed in, which was the original version of Sabanin Kills the Black Chicken, the Swahili song appeared. Yang Yi's version did not include these songs. After all, this language was too obscure, and Yang Yi did not know how to play it. The rhythm became lighter and lighter, but the little girl forgot what to do next. Fortunately, her eyes were still looking down the stage. Murphy also noticed that she was facing a problem, so she turned her left hand and right hand to give her some hints at the right time. She's eyes lit up. She remembered. For the next dance, she could rely on her physical instincts, which she had practiced for so long, and she did not need her mother to remind her anymore. However, in the eyes of the audience, this dance was a little strange. Although it was very fresh, they felt that it lacked a little excitement. However, she did not just rely on her arms to dance. Soon, the little girl matched it with a simple shuffle step, and at the same time, waved her arms like before. This dance looked much better. Prada watched from below the stage with a smile. When the camera panned over, she also looked at the camera with interest and waved her arms like she. Although she was not as good looking as she always had the feeling that this little dance is very simple. Prada was like she, with her right arm on her waist, and her left index finger extended forward and retracted. She turned it over and extended it forward and retracted it again. Her palm pushed forward and retracted. The audience was probably thinking the same thing. I can do it too. However, this was not the real climax yet. At the front, the audience's attention was focused on she's waving little arms. When the originally complicated instrumental accompaniment suddenly became simple, leaving only the electronic music from Seve that made people want to dance, not only did the rhythm and emotion of the music reach a climax, but the audience's emotions also instantly entered a state of excitement. The little girl in the middle of the stage, who had already entered a state of mind, retracted her waving hands. As if she was running, she clenched her small fists and naturally kept them by her side. Accompanied by the lively dance steps, the little girl actually turned sideways and danced with her side facing the audience and the camera. However, this sideways turn was like a stroke of genius, turning everyone's attention to she's cheerful steps. Oh my God! There were already audience members who could not help but open their mouths. She's smooth and dazzling steps completely attracted them. It was unknown how many people put away their previous contempt at this moment, but it was believed that all the audience members were infected by the music and dance steps at this moment. Their bodies tensed up, and they could not wait to get up and dance as well. The effect of she's three-quarter casual jeans at this moment was reflected. The little girl's slender and long legs gave people the illusion that although she was petite, her legs were as long as an adult's. The little long legs, coupled with the cheerful and dynamic shuffle dance, complemented each other, and also added a lot of charm to each other. Although she was still too young, and this dance was a little less sexy, it was also a little more fresh and cute. Looking at the little girl's serious little face, there was a kind of adorable feeling that made people want to dote on her. I like this little girl. She's too cute. An audience member could not help but say to her friend. I like this dance even more. I want to dance too. Her female companion said excitedly. That underscore amazing. At this moment, Prada was already shocked by she's dance. Although it was exaggerated, she was not so easily surprised. However, she could still see the magic of this dance from she's performance at this moment. She could not help but say to the camera, Ladies and gentlemen, I can't wait to tell you that the dance you're watching now has its music Seve. I'm afraid that from tomorrow onwards, you'll find it everywhere. There was only half of the dance, and she finished dancing in a little more than a minute. The little girl was slightly out of breath after the dance, but she was in a state of excitement at this moment and did not feel tired at all. This kind of excitement needed to be shared with others. Therefore, when Prada went on stage, before she could say a few words of praise, the little girl looked at Prada expectantly and said, Ms. Prada, I can teach you how to dance now. The little girl also said very considerately, Ms. Prada, this dance may be a little difficult to learn, but it's okay, I can only teach you the most fun part first. The most fun part? Wasn't it just the shuffling dance at the climax? Prada was embarrassed. She looked at her fat body in front of the camera and coughed twice. She gestured with her arms and said, "Can we only learn this part?" Chapter 8:19. After recording Prada's talk show, Yang Yi and the rest were counting down to their vacation in the United States. After all, she was about to go to primary school. She had to sign up, pay, report, etc. There were many chores that Yang Yi and Murphy had to prepare in advance for the little girl. However, at the end of August, before they returned to China, the episode of Prada's talk show that they recorded was quickly broadcast on TV. In a private house in California, Jermaine Lee, who had passed the excitement of receiving the prize money for undercover tracking, was packing up his fishing gear in the tool house. He was preparing to go fishing with his old friends over the weekend. Jermaine! Jermaine! Suddenly, his wife Linda, who was watching TV with the children in the living room, suddenly shouted, "What's wrong?" Jermaine thought that something had happened to his pregnant wife, so he rushed over. Linda smiled and pointed at the TV, saying, "Jermaine, weren't they the ones who helped you and Hill last time?" The TV was playing Prada's talk show, and the guests sitting on the sofa. Linda did not recognize them at first. Foreigners had face blindness when it came to Asians, even though Linda had seen photos. However, when she heard their names, Linda reacted. Jermaine looked at the TV and said in surprise, "That's right, it's them. They're actually celebrities?" Jermaine couldn't help but sit down and watch it with his wife. When he saw Mo Fei singing and heard Mo Fei's emotional voice, Jermaine couldn't believe his ears. "It's so good!" Linda exclaimed. Jermaine said emotionally, "When Yang told me that his wife was a professional singer, I did not believe it. I felt that if Yang was a professional singer, it would be easier to believe. However, as for his wife, I have never heard her sing before. But she's really good. Look at Prada's evaluation," Linda said. Someone from the production team of Undercover Tracking also watched the episode of Undercover Tracking. Coincidentally, that person was an assistant director of the production team. He also happened to have a deep impression of the amazing Chinese that Jermaine and the rest met. The next day, he hurriedly took the recording of the Prada talk show and ran to their TV station to find the executive director. "Tim, we're so lucky. We actually met a big star who didn't need to pay an appearance fee during the recording of the show. You have to give him more scenes in that episode, and also the part where he sings. You don't know how incredible this family's performance on the Prada show was." There was no need for these directors to guess. In the American entertainment newspapers that had already been published, many media outlets had reported on Yang Yi and his family. They were not those fancy gossip media outlets. There were many real experts among them. They could tell that Yang Yi's Diamonds was extraordinary, and they could also tell that Murphy's performance of the song was wonderful. Therefore, the media scrambled to report on the singer, the song, and the man behind it. China's 50 million selling singer performs Prada talk show, Diamonds Shine. She outshines diamonds tonight. China's Helena, her song will conquer your ears. Helena was a popular American singer in this world. Her singing was also quite good. He's the creator of Prison Break, and also the creator and singer of I'm Yours. Today, his new song was perfectly performed by his wife, a genius from China, writing books, scriptwriting, songwriting, singing. What doesn't he know? Although the focus was different, it had to be said that the overwhelming media coverage still attracted the attention of many curious Americans and interested musicians. Soon, the number of views for the new episode of Prada Talk Show that was officially uploaded to the video website skyrocketed. It quickly left the other videos behind. After all, Prada Talk Show was originally a daytime program. Most of the audience were housewives like Linda, who had little interest in the internet. Who knew that this episode would become different. It was more popular among young people who liked to surf the internet. They watched it on demand and also shared it on social media sites. The video clip of Murphy's singing was cut and received more attention. Wilson, who was ready, released the audio source of Yang Yi and Murphy's English song. Not only did the sales of Diamonds hit the top 50 of the Billboard chart in just a few days, but Yang Yi and Murphy's other songs, I'm Yours, Let It Go, and so on, also received a lot of attention. The sales also squeezed into the top 100 after a week. This was especially true for I'm Yours. Originally, many young people had been searching for this song. Now, it finally appeared on a convenient download channel. Although it lacked some promotion, this song's reputation was much higher than that of Diamonds. It was especially sought after by young people who liked romance. Therefore, its potential to climb up the charts in the future was very promising. But no one expected that when this episode of Prada Talk Show was released on the internet, the most popular part was not Yang E and Murphy's performance, but Shishi's last dance. Even the commentary clip of the enthusiastic young lady teaching Prada how to dance was clicked and played by many fans. Shishi's dance was really beautiful. The young lady suddenly became popular, even more popular than her parents. Even the video clip on the video website was crowned with the gimmick of the most dancing little girl in history. Of course, this was just a gimmick. Although Shishi's dance was beautiful, she was not a professional dancer after all. She had not danced since elementary school. Compared to those young dancers who were truly talented and had received professional training, she was far from it. However, this did not stop people from liking Shishi and the dance. The rhythm was brisk, the movements were simple, and the dance was lively. It could also show off a girl's perfect figure. Coupled with the brainwashing dance song, Seve, how could such a dance not become popular? Even though it was still lacking, the sharp-eyed Mao Peifu seized the opportunity and started a Facebook campaign to record a video of her dancing to Seve. Yang Yi's account that posted the music was, of course, available for purchase and download. Hence, many people started practicing according to Shishi's video. Some people recorded videos that were not very good at dancing, but among them, there were also videos of hot beauties dancing very well. These videos also received a lot of views. They were the key to Seve's popularity. More and more people participated in this campaign. It was not only the beauties from the United States, but also from other countries. Even the girls from China participated. Of course, the men who liked to dance were not to be outdone. More and more people registered and used Facebook. People were keen to upload their videos to video websites and were more willing to share it with their friends on social media to gain their praise. In less than a month, Seve had become a global topic. People were obsessed with this brisk dance. Of course, the person who started it, Yang E, and the founder of the Seve shuffle dance, Shishi, had also become the top internet celebrities known by the world. Of course, at that time, Shishi had already left the United States and had even started her elementary school career. Chapter 8:20. Shishi did not know that she had become famous in America. She, who was returning to the country with her father and mother, was still immersed in the sadness of parting with her grandfather and grandmother, as well as her best friends, Xiao Bai and Hua Hua. When they were waiting at the airport after transferring from Xiaonuo City to San Francisco, the little girl was no longer interested in running around to admire the VIP lounge. She snuggled up to her father obediently, her long eyelashes still glistening with tears. "Papa, when Hua Hua grows up, it will go back to the forest to look for its mom, right?" Shishi asked pitifully as she looked at her father. These were questions she had asked countless times before she left. However, when she really could not see them, Shishi could not help but worry about the delicate and pitiful deer. Yang Yi patted her head gently and said with a smile, "That's right. When Hua Hua grows up a little more, Grandpa will bring it to familiarize itself with life in the forest with Grandpa Lister and Grandpa Beria. Then, it will go back to its mother. Then we won't be able to see Hua Hua when we come to Grandpa's house next year, right?" Although Shishi was happy that Hua Hua could return to the forest, a strong sense of reluctance rose in her heart. Hua Hua is different from Xiao Bai. It belongs to the forest. Although we won't be able to see Hua Hua in the future, we know that it's doing well. Isn't that enough? Yang Yi replied patiently. He would never be able to give Cici a satisfactory answer to these questions. The only thing Yang Yi could do was accompany his daughter to walk out of this sad mood. Time would always heal everything. When Yang Yi and his family were about to board the plane to return to the country, the first episode of China's Voice, which had been prepared for months, was finally broadcast on the capital television station. Meng Fanxing did not go back on his words. China's Voice was scheduled to be broadcasted at 8 p.m. on Friday during the prime time slot. The overwhelming publicity that Meng Fanxing had previously arranged was effective as well. Many people who were enjoying the upcoming weekend were already waiting in front of their televisions in anticipation. Song Ji, the die-hard fan who had previously taught many people how to surmount obstacles to watch Yang Yi's videos on overseas video websites, was also a music fan. With such a grand music variety show like China's Voice being broadcasted, she naturally would not miss it. It was only 7:50 a.m. when Song Ji rushed out of her room and shouted, "Mom, change the channel quickly. I want to watch Chan Yijie on Beijing TV." "What are you looking at, Chan Yijie?" "I'm watching a TV show," Mama Song said angrily. On the side, Papa Song raised his eyelids. He didn't want to get involved in the women's war over the remote control. In the end, Song Ji managed to snatch the remote control. Taking advantage of the commercial break, she switched to Beijing television station and said with a smile, "Mom, why don't you watch it first? Who knows, you might like it too. You hurry up and go to school. School is about to start and you're still at home," Mama Song grumbled. Coincidentally, after a short commercial break, China's Voice started broadcasting. The program flow was similar to Yang Yi's previous life. The opening was a logo animation of China's Voice holding a microphone and raising 2 fingers. Following that, 4 red chairs lit up. The 4 coaches appeared one after another and gave a simple explanation of the format of China's Voice. As a good singer, the most fundamental thing is your voice. Mama Song looked at the person who spoke and couldn't help but exclaim, isn't this that so-and-so? Papa Song was also interested, Lin Qitian. He was very popular in the 80s and 90s when he sang. But I haven't seen him for a long time. Why is he on this show? Song Ji said proudly, because the program team invited him to be a coach. He's the same as Chan Yijie and the other 2. They're all very experienced musicians. Lin Qitian is also a professor at the Central Academy of Music. TSK, this show has invited all capable people. Papa Song said with interest. Why are their chairs facing away from the others? Mama Song couldn't help but feel strange when she saw the TV cut to the scene of the coaches sitting down and turning their chairs around. This is because when they choose the contestants, they will only listen to the contestants' voices and choose the contestants based on the quality of their voices. This is called a blind selection. Song Ji explained excitedly. She had been paying attention to relevant news and had seen the leaked spy photos. Mom, let me tell you. In the past, the news said that the show would cover the contestants with a cloth so that the coaches couldn't see their faces. Now, the program team has slapped them in the face. I think this format is very interesting. It was indeed interesting. Mama Song's interest was piqued. She forgot that the commercial break was over and her TV series had already started broadcasting. Now, she was looking forward to the first contestant's appearance. Of course, China Star Productions didn't disappoint them. China's Voice didn't drag at all and quickly cut to the main topic, the first contestant's appearance. So fast. Song Ji couldn't help but exclaim, there wasn't any foreshadowing at the beginning. Indeed, there wasn't. This world's China's Voice didn't even have a VCR to introduce the contestants at the beginning. The first contestant was a very short female contestant. Under the encouragement of the host backstage, she pushed open the door and walked out onto the brightly lit stage. She's so short. How can she be a singer? Mama Song said in a picky tone. Mom, it doesn't matter if you're tall or short, as long as you have a musical dream and a good voice, you can go on this stage. This stage is meant to give those who don't have the chance to show their talents elsewhere a chance to realize their dreams. Song Ji said. Of course, they were only expressing their opinions. Soon after, the short female contestant used her explosive voice to impress many of the audience members, including Mama Song, who didn't approve of her. This girl's lung capacity is amazing. Papa Song couldn't help but exclaim. Of course, The most exciting moment was when she sang at the top of her lungs. Lin Qitian took the initiative to press the button on the table and turned his chair around to face the contestant. The director even arranged for a close-up of the chair. On the chair that was turned around, the words, "I choose you," were lit up. Seeing this, the short girl who was singing on stage had an excited expression on her face. Her eyes even started to sparkle with tears. The audience sitting in front of their televisions couldn't help but feel happy for her. It wasn't easy. After crossing so many obstacles, she could finally continue to walk on this stage. It was worth mentioning that this World's China's Voice didn't have too many gimmicks. There was also no opportunity for the contestants to tell their stories after the competition. The intermediate segment was just a selection of contestants and comments by the coaches. Even the contestants who didn't make it were not without benefits. The 4 coaches gave them pointers one after another. Lin Qitian, Chan Yijie, and the other capable coaches gave them valuable suggestions. These were all stipulated in the coaches' contracts. The program team spent a lot of money to invite the coaches to give them lessons, so naturally, it wasn't just a formality. The program team also provided a very good opportunity for the contestants who contributed their voices to the program to improve themselves. Of course, how much they could learn and how much they could improve depended on their personal development. But in the eyes of Song Ji and many of the audience and music lovers in front of their televisions, this was a treatment that made them go crazy with envy. Even if they lost, it wouldn't be a loss. Chapter 8:21. She did not change much after returning to China from America. She rested at home for a day to adjust to the jet lag. Then, she ran to Lan Xian's villa energetically to play with Lan Xian. She also shared the photos and stories she brought back from America with her. Tong Tong had changed a lot. He had lived abroad for 2 months. Not only did he learn how to call his parents, but he also learned how to sit and crawl on his own. He seemed to have forgotten the environment he lived in 2 months ago. After returning from his grandfather's huge house, Tong Tong was confused about the new environment. When Yang Yi was talking to Murphy, Murphy was overjoyed and told him, "You don't know." When he woke up, he looked around like a fool. He seemed to be asking, "Why did my house suddenly become smaller? Why aren't there any animals outside my house? Why is it so quiet all of a sudden?" Of course, Murphy was joking. Tong Tong was really curious about this new environment. Tong Tong could crawl on his own now. This was equivalent to an adventurer who loved to explore the unknown, obtaining a means of transportation. Tong Tong could not wait to start his adventure when his mother was not paying attention. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, Yang Yi went out. She also went to Lan Xian's place. Only Murphy accompanied Tong Tong to play on the carpet in the living room. It just so happened that Luo Xian called her. Mo Fei's mobile phone was placed upstairs. She glanced at the door and window, patted Xiao Ran's little butt, and said with a smile, "Ran, you have to play downstairs, okay? Mommy is going upstairs to get my phone. I'll be back soon." Tong Tong did not understand what his mother said. He crawled over and sat down. He picked up a big plastic soldier toy and opened his mouth. He was about to use his few baby teeth to gnaw on the poor plastic soldier's head. "No. Hua Hua. You can't gnaw on the toy." Murphy raised her voice and shouted before she went upstairs. Although little Fuchen couldn't understand his mother's words, he knew that his mother was calling him and that he couldn't do anything. Coupled with his mother's stern tone, the little guy still put down his toy in grievance. "That's good. Go play downstairs. Mommy will be down soon." Murphy went upstairs. She unplugged her charging phone and called Luo Xian back. Luo Xian called because she saw the video and news report of Mo Fei's performance on the American talk show on the internet. The news reports in China were lagging behind, but they were still proud of Murphy's achievements and influence overseas. The Voice has become the hottest topic recently, but Murphy's voice has become an international hit. Murphy sings on US TV and conquers US audience with her singing. Diamond shines on the charts overseas. Murphy has become a big star overseas. It was similar to the news reports in China after Yang Yi became popular. People like to promote this special feeling. It was as if a local celebrity had become a national hero after performing overseas. Luo Xin complained sourly that Murphy did not sing such a good song on her show. She also complained that she did not bring Shishi on her show and let Shishi go on an overseas show. Tell me the truth. Are you going overseas to develop your career? Luo Xin wanted to invite Murphy and her family to appear on Jishin Interview again. However, Murphy had appeared on her show too many times. The last time was in April. It had not even been half a year. If she invited them again, the audience would be disgusted. Luo Xin did not make this request. She only called to tease Murphy because she saw her as a good sister. Why would I? I haven't developed my career in China yet. Why would I go overseas? Murphy laughed with Luo Xin as she unplugged her phone charger and prepared to go downstairs to call her son. She had to keep an eye on Tong Tong. Otherwise, she would not feel at ease. However, Murphy did not know that after she went upstairs, Tong Tong turned his head and blinked his big black eyes. He stared at his mother's back in a daze. No one knew what he was thinking about, or perhaps he had made a decision. The little guy grinned, and his little dimples appeared. He smiled happily and leaned over, using his two chubby little arms to support himself, and climbed up from the ground. Perhaps it was because he was well nourished and had not been sick since he was young. Tong Tong had developed very well. His two little arms were very strong and supported him as he climbed to the edge of the carpet in the living room. The floor was cold, but it was the end of summer and the beginning of autumn. It was much more comfortable than the warm carpet. Tong Tong lifted his little head as if to confirm the direction. He then continued to climb forward with his little butt sticking out. This house was so unfamiliar. Tong Tong wanted to look around. Murphy held the charger in her arms as she walked downstairs with her phone in her hand. She did not notice that Tong Tong was nimbly climbing through the side hall when she turned around. Mom's voice? Tong Tong turned a deaf ear to it. He was interested in the cats that Yang Yi had brought home yesterday. Tong Tong was more interested in the furry cats than the yellow dog, Steamed Bun, who was wagging his tail. Steamed Bun came over and sniffed Tong Tong's little hand. However, Tong Tong leaned back a little and raised his fair and smooth right hand. He pressed his little hand against Steamed Bun's nose and pushed him. Woo woo. Steamed Bun lay down on the side with his head on his forelegs and looked at his little master pitifully. He had been so excited to go home from Lon Xian's place. In the end, other than the happy return yesterday, it was once again ignored today. Shishi went to play with Lon Xian, and Tong Tong did not want to play with him. Steamed Bun began to doubt his dog life. Tong Tong ignored Steamed Bun. He was excitedly looking up at the three cats lying on the cat tree. The little guy had returned to his sitting position and was happily scratching the air with his two little hands, as if he was calling for Xiao Guai and the others to come down. Perhaps Tong Tong had some special magic, but Xiao Guai jumped down from the cat tree. His round bluish-black tail was like a snake. He stood up and slightly curled up behind him. He went into Tong Tong's arms. He. Tong Tong was so happy that he gave Xiao Guai a big hug. As he hugged Xiao Guai, Tong Tong's little dimples seemed to ripple happily. It felt good to hug Xiao Guai. Xiao Guai's fur was as soft and smooth as the finest satin. He was also chubby, just like Tong Tong. It was very comfortable to hug him. Xiao Guai did not struggle. He just patted Tong Tong's arm with his tail and looked at the disappointed Steamed Bun with his round eyes. When Xiao Guai's three-petaled mouth was slightly raised, it looked like a doge smile. Steamed Bun looked at Xiao Guai's smug face and lowered his head again, as if he had been hurt 10,000 times. Chapter 8:22. Tong Guai did not notice. Tong Tong, who was hugging him, grinned for a while before he fixed his big eyes on Tong Guai's nimble tail. Tong Guai's head moved along with his tail, and saliva gathered in his slightly opened mouth. His growing gums were itching again. Just as Tong Tong reached out to grab Tong Guai's tail, Tong Guai's mother's anxious voice came from the living room. "Mommy, mommy, where did you go?" Fortunately, Tong Tong was distracted by Tong Guai and did not crawl far away. Murphy, who had hurried over, quickly found her son, who was about to bite Tong Guai's tail, in the side hall. Xiao Guai was still oblivious. Although its tail was a little uncomfortable being grabbed by little Siamese, it was very tolerant of little Siamese today. Its pancake-like cat face moved from the aggrieved bun to the big master. Murphy, who was still in shock, picked up Tong Tong from the ground. Tong Tong, who had no strength to resist, had no choice but to let go of Tong Guai. Murphy kissed Tong Tong's cheek and scolded him, "Why are you crawling everywhere? You almost scared Mom to death." However, Tong Tong was not satisfied yet. He stretched his neck and tried to squeeze out of his mother's arms. He stretched out his small hands and cawed as he reached for Tong Guai. "I haven't played enough yet." Murphy heaved a sigh of relief. She smiled and gently tapped Tong Tong's nose. She said affectionately, "You are so naughty." "She's so naughty even though she hasn't grown up yet. What should I do?" Murphy was still happy to let Tong Tong crawl while she exercised her body coordination through playing. However, Murphy had to consider a problem. How could she prevent Tong Tong from crawling away when she was distracted? Bingo! Murphy had an idea. Half an hour later, Yang Yi's living room changed drastically. Tong Tong was sitting in the middle of the carpet in a daze. He looked around and saw a large area where he could move freely. However, the area outside the area was surrounded like a castle. There was no escape route for him. Murphy spent a lot of effort to build the castle. She used pillows, winter quilts from the cabinet, and even some large dolls of Shi. Together with the sofa, the castle surrounded a large area in front of the TV. In addition, Murphy moved the coffee table in front of the sofa to give Tong Tong more room to move. The soft walls, the small room, seemed to be surrounded by quilts, pillows, and other things. After the project was completed, Murphy clapped her hands and looked around with satisfaction. Then, she said to Tong Tong proudly, "Mommy, you can climb as you wish now. Mom doesn't have to worry about you getting lost." Tong Tong looked around in confusion. However, he was not content to just sit there. He still climbed to the edge of the castle, in high spirits. Murphy sat on the sofa and smiled as she watched her son hit a wall. On the road of exploration, Xiao Qiao encountered a tall mountain made of pillows and quilts, but Xiao Qiao did not give up. For freedom and exploration, Xiao Qiao bravely launched an attack on the mountain. Tong Tong raised his left hand and pressed it on the quilt. Then, he pressed his other hand on it. Are you trying to crawl over?" Mo Fei was a little surprised. However, Mo Fei did not intend to stop him. Instead, she picked up her phone with interest and recorded it for her son. Regardless of whether he succeeded or failed, Murphy felt that it was very interesting. She wanted to record it for Yang Yi. Tong Tong moved step by step, pressing on the quilt and pillows. He lifted his body little by little and finally stood up shakily. "Oh my God, did you see that? He almost stood up." Murphy was surprised and exclaimed softly behind the camera. Murphy had been taking care of Lil Fawn for the longest time, but this was the first time she had seen Lil Fawn stand upright with the help of something else. Usually, Lil Fawn had to be supported by his parents before he could stand up limply. Of course, little Fuching also liked to walk. Every time his parents helped him up, he would excitedly giggle and rush forward with big strides. Even though he was still too young, and the 9-month-old little Momo's legs were still soft, and he didn't have the strength to support himself, he still had the courage to move forward. Murphy did not expect to see Tong Tong's amazing growth today. He was supporting himself on other things to stand up. Tong Tong did not know that he had made great progress in human history. He was still trying his best to deal with the mountain in front of him. Even if he stood up, he would not be able to go over. What should he do? The little boy was very tenacious. He stood there and pondered for a while. He seemed to be holding back his strength. Finally, Murphy saw him trying to lift one of his legs while hugging a pillow. He flipped over as if he was turning over. Of course, a miracle did not happen. Tong Tong's right leg went soft and he sat down on the floor. He lost his balance and fell on his back. Mo Fei was very happy to see this, but little Momo was scared by what she did. The originally happy little dimples were gone, replaced by a small mouth that was pursed with lingering fear. Her big eyes began to fill with tears, and she was ready to burst out crying at any time. Tong Tong did not feel any pain from the fall. The carpet was very soft, and Tong Tong did not fall hard. He was just shocked by the sudden fall. "Oh, oh, oh. Don't cry. Mom, come and take a look." Murphy saw the situation and hurriedly went over to hug the little boy. Tong Tong did not cry for long. After a while, he got down from his mother's arms and climbed to the edge of the castle with interest. Murphy happily turned on the TV. She watched the TV while looking after the little boy. The television was currently broadcasting the trailer for the first season of Shanghai TV station's The Limit Challenge concert. Although this season's program had ended last week, the last episode of this special program would normally only show Dan Hongkue and the others competing for the songwriters, learning from the songwriters, and asking for a song, as well as some clips before and after the concert. The program team was very bad and left some suspense. They had already colluded with Shanghai TV station, so the full version of the concert would only be broadcasted tonight. Murphy watched the TV for a while, but she did not know why she felt uncomfortable sitting on the sofa. She looked left and right, and an idea came to her mind. She got down from the sofa and sat in the castle, beside Tong Tong. "This is so comfortable. I feel so safe." After a while, she brought Lan Xin home to play. The two girls wore slippers and ran in. Their cheerful laughter could be heard from afar. "Auntie Mo, my dad said that I can have dinner at Shi's house tonight," Lan Xin reported to Murphy as soon as she entered the house. Murphy did not have to guess. Lan Hao Kai definitely did not ask Yang Yi and directly threw his daughter over to eat and drink. She smiled and said, "That's great. I'll call your Uncle Yang later and ask him to cook a few more delicious dishes tonight." "Hee hee. Thank you, Auntie Mo." After Lan Xin finished speaking, she excitedly hugged Shi and shouted, "I can have dinner at your house tonight." Cici, on the other hand, saw the fortress made by her mother. Her gaze fell on those large dolls. The little girl couldn't help but pout her little mouth and say, "Mama, why is my big bear here? Did Steamed Bun dig it out?" Steamed Bun was happily wagging his tail behind her. When he heard the little master call his name, he raised his head and looked over with his big, innocent eyes. How could it be made by Steamed Bun? Mama moved them down. Look at this, Mama surrounded them, so that your little brother can play in them and won't climb to other places. Mo Fei smiled and said. Tong Tong also saw his sister. He happily held out the plastic soldier in his hand. It was not clear whether he wanted to invite his sister to play or give his favorite toy to her. This was all because his sister treated him very well. Tong Tong loved to play with his sister. When she heard that the plushies were for her little brother to play with, the little girl stopped pouting and said briskly, "Okay then. I can give them to my little brother to play with." Chapter 823. The full version of Extreme Selectivity's charity concert was broadcast at the end of the summer break. Although the most discussed variety show in daily life and on Weibo had shifted from Extreme Selectivity to China's The Voice, with people praising the new show's novelty and brilliance, and lamenting the quality of its live concert sound effects, there were still quite a number of die-hard fans who were looking forward to the full version of the concert broadcast. Jiang Yujie, who lived in Min Province, had been waiting for this day for a week. There were 6 contestants in the Limit Challenge. Jiang Yujie liked Yang Huan, who was straightforward, pretty, and good at martial arts. It was said that Yang Huan, who was not good at singing, would work hard to sing. Jiang Yujie was looking forward to her performance. Jiang Yujie hoped that Yang Huan could give her fans a different surprise. Of course, in his heart, he still wanted to see Yang Huan make a fool of herself. However, after watching the last episode, Jiang Yujie changed his mind. He moved Yang Hwan's performance back and left the spot of his most anticipated performance to Dan Hongkue and Yang Yi's collaboration. It was said that it would be a Hokkien song. Zhang Yujie, who spoke Hokkien, would naturally support this performance. At 10 p.m., the final episode of the Limit Challenge's first season was broadcast. Zhang Yujie watched it with great interest. Yang Hwan's performance was ranked second. What made Zhang Yujie happy and a little regretful was that Yang Hwan's performance wasn't bad. Although she couldn't sing well and didn't know how to play musical instruments, under the ingenious arrangement of her partner, Yang Hwan sang the simpler parts. What Zhang Yujie didn't know was that Yang Hwan had put in a lot of effort in June for these few lines of the song. Under Jin Ingming's guidance, she had practiced for a long time in the recording studio. Although Yang Hwan's singing was average in the eyes of professional singers, her performance was enough to surprise the audience, such as Zhang Yujie. More importantly, Zhang Yujie also saw Yang Hwan's wonderful fan dance, which was choreographed by an expert, not Yang Yi. It was a performance that was mixed with dance moves and martial arts, which made up for Yang Hwan's lack of singing. Wonderful! After watching it, Zhang Yujie could not help but applaud Yang Hwan at home. Every program was very exciting, with songs and dances. It was beyond Zhang Yujie's expectations. In the previous episode, Zhang Yujie had thought that the charity concert would be a concert from the beginning to the end. However, the program team's arrangement still gave the audience too many surprises. Whether it was the original songs or the old songs that were mixed in with the new songs, they all reflected everyone's efforts. Including the beauty of the stage and the lighting, it was not inferior to a professional gala. The only regret is that the show is scheduled to air on Wednesday at 10 p.m. During the commercial break, Zhang Yujie couldn't help but complain in his heart. By the time Dan Hongkue and Yang Yi appeared, it would probably be 12 o'clock. Because the order of appearance in the previous episode had been decided, Dan Hongkue's performance was the last. However, the good news is that the next season has been confirmed to air on Saturday at 8 p.m. That's a great time slot. You can't miss it. Zhang Yujie's mood fluctuated between good and bad. It's just that we'll have to wait until next year for the next season. How annoying. Luckily, there's still China's Voice to watch. Yang Yi should do more variety shows. Two aren't enough, the more the merrier. Time flew by quickly amidst the exciting performances and Zhang Yujie's wild thoughts. Gradually, the concert came to an end, and Dan Hongkue and Yang Yi finally appeared on stage. The beginning was like an opera, but also like the prelude to a lion dance. It made Zhang Yujie's dizzy head immediately sober. And then, Love to work hard to win. The melody of this song is so old. Zhang Yujie thought with emotion. He was a nostalgic person. Since he was young, he had been influenced by the Nanyang melodies that were spread all over the streets. Now that he heard it again, he liked it even more. The TV cameras also cut to the guests who were accompanied by the selected members. This was the first time they had heard Yang Yi's song. Like Zhang Yujie, they were all mesmerized by the melody of the song. They even held each other's hands and started twisting, as if they were dancing on the beach. A momentary lapse in judgment cannot be forgiven. Yang Yi took the lead and raised the microphone to sing the first line. Wait a minute, chicken eat feces, doorbell bomb? What was he singing? Many of the audience were confused, but the audience in front of the TV was much better. Although most of the audience were confused, they could read the subtitles. They could pretend that they understood the song, just like those people who thought they understood the English dialogue of the American movies by reading the subtitles. Zhang Yujie was different. As he could speak Hokkien, he could really understand it. Not bad. His singing is quite accurate. Zhang Yujie remembered that Yang Yi was from Onqing. He also remembered that Yang Yi had said in the previous episode that he learned Hokkien because his wife Murphy's ancestors were Taiwanese. Now it seemed that Yang Yi's language skills were indeed heaven-defying. Not only did he speak English well, but he also spoke Hokkien very well. Following that, it was Dan Hongkue's turn to sing the next three lines. A momentary lapse in judgment cannot be forgiven, no hope lost, every day drunk. It was obvious who was better. Dan Honkuei's singing of Hokkien was full of mistakes in Jeong Yoo-jae's ears. Of course, to those who did not understand Hokkien, Dan Honkuei's singing was still pretty good. After all, to be able to sing a song in a language that they did not understand accurately or close to the basic pronunciation after more than half a month of practice was still praiseworthy. A soulless body like a scarecrow. It was Yang Yi's turn to sing again. Jeong Yoo-jae, who was more picky with his ears, immediately felt more comfortable. This won't do. I can't just focus on whether they're singing correctly or not. Jeong Yoo-jae suddenly came to a realization. He decided to forget about all this and focused on listening to the song while looking at the subtitles. Life can be compared to the waves on the sea, sometimes they rise and sometimes they fall. This classic line was sung by Yang Yi. Jeong Yoo-jae felt as if he had drunk a few glasses of wine and became slightly tipsy. It was too nice to listen to. Yang Yi's singing was exactly the same as Murphy's. Both of them did not have any exaggerated movements, but this made it easier for people to focus on their singing. Listening to the emotional and rhythmic singing, Jeong Yoo-jae felt as if he was immersed in the world described by the song. Good luck, bad luck. Dan Honkuei and Yang Yi looked at each other and sang a line. This scene was quite interesting, but Jeong Yoo-jae still paid more attention to this song. Dan Honkuei's singing is not bad. Although there are some small mistakes in the pronunciation of some words, his voice is very good. No wonder he's known as the best singer among the best actors. Jeong Yoo-jae put aside the language concerns and happily judged. Of course, the audience who did not speak Hokkien did not have such complicated thoughts. They just felt that this song was very nice to listen to. Not only was the melody beautiful, but the lyrics were also very inspirational. Since the concert started, this is the song that fits the theme of extreme challenges the best. Many of the audience members felt this way. 30% is destined by the heavens, 70% is hard work, only those who love to work hard can win. When the song came to an end, Yang Yi and Dan Honkuei sang the most important lyrics for the third time in unison. Many of the audience members could not help but hum along. Yes, even if they did not understand Hokkien, this section was relatively simple and catchy. How could the infected audience not sing along? Jeong Yoo-jae was also full of pride as he sang along for the last time. Although the melody lingered and the ending was not over, he could not help but sigh in his heart. So our Hokkien language can also have such nice songs. There were many nice Hokkien songs, but the most popular one was Only Those Who Love to Work Hard Can Win. Jeong Yoo-jae also deeply liked this song. He decided to download this song online. He wanted Yang Yi's original version. Previously, Phoebe Studios' official micro-broadcasting had already sent out a message saying that the source of this song would be released after the program was broadcast. I want to learn this song. When the time comes for the school's singing competition, I want to sing this song in the competition. Jeong Yoo-jae thought happily. Chapter 8:24. Needless to say, although Love to Work Hard to Win was only a Hokkien song, its beautiful melody and positive lyrics expressed the spirit of working hard. It would become the most suitable song for the theme song of The Limit Challenge in people's hearts, and it was also liked by many fans. However, the singing of this song also represented the end of the first season of The Limit Challenge. How could the fans bear to part with it? They ran to the official website and the 6 members' micro-broadcasting accounts overnight. They even ran to Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting account to urge the second season to return as soon as possible. However, this could only be a fantasy. The next season of The Limit Challenge would have to wait until the spring of next year. September quietly arrived. The end of the summer vacation also heralded the beginning of a new school year. Batch after batch of new students would also step into their primary school, middle school, and even university. The teachers of Huijia Primary School also returned to school early. Among them, the teachers of the first grade who were preparing to welcome the new students, especially the teachers who were also the form teachers, had already received the list of children in their classes. Li Rulan was the form teacher of the first grade's class 3. She casually glanced at the list and prepared to go back to write the script for her speech to the parents. After all, she was still very young. She was only about 28 years old this year. She had been a teacher and form teacher for 2 years, but it was her first time leading a new class. She still needed to prepare. "Teacher Li, is there a child named Yang Shi in your class?" At this time, the form teacher of class 2, who was also Li Rulan's good friend, Lu Xianxian, came over and asked with a smile. "Wait, let me see." Li Rulan had no choice but to pick up the list again and ask casually, "Why are you suddenly asking about this?" Without waiting for Lu Xianxian to answer, Li Rulan found the name Yang Shi in the last row. "Yes, in my class, there's a girl. What's wrong? Is she an acquaintance of yours?" No, at that time, Teacher Kai, who was in charge of invigilating the exam, said that this Yang Shi was a genius. It was probably because her family taught her well. Anyway, Teacher Kai felt ashamed after hearing her English. In addition, it was said that she also knew Swedish. Lu Xianxian said with a face full of gossip, "Fortunately, you're a Chinese teacher. Although I'm also teaching your class, I'm a math teacher. I'm not worried about having a lot of pressure." "So amazing? Really?" Li Rulan was a little surprised. "I'm a dog if I lie to you." Lu Xianxian laughed. Li Rulan felt a burst of joy in her heart. There was an outstanding student in her class who could produce results. Any teacher who knew about it would be happy. Lu Xianxian was still gossiping. "Hey, what kind of family can raise such an amazing child? Teske, they can even speak Swedish. Is their family a diplomat family? You'll know when school starts." Li Rulan laughed. Yang Xiaoxi, who had been noticed by the teacher, did not appear to be a genius at this moment. "Papa, Papa, push me higher." The little girl's bell-like laughter echoed in the courtyard. She also floated back and forth in the air. Her long hair swung up and down like the unfolding of clouds. It was extremely beautiful. She is playing on the swing in the yard. Yesterday, Yang Yi went to the Sahara Publishing House and passed by the children's play area specially prepared by the Sahara Publishing House for young parents and authors who came to train. With Yang Yi's current status, he naturally could not help but stop and watch. A few children swinging happily on the swing made Yang Yi suddenly have the idea of installing a swing at home. It just so happened that the materials were ready-made. There was also a spare children's swing in the warehouse of the Sahara Publishing House, so Yang Yi moved it back. As soon as it was installed this morning, she could not wait to sit on it and asked her father to push her on the swing. She liked the feeling of swinging high and then quickly swinging down. "Higher? No, if it goes any higher, you'll fly out." Yang Yi walked to Shi's side and pointed to the distant sky with a smile. He said to her, "Do you see that? When the time comes, you'll fly into outer space." He. The little girl did not know if she was amused by her father's humor or if she was enjoying the joy of playing on the swing, but she could not stop laughing. On the side, Steamed Bun also excitedly jumped around on the swing. He did not dare to go up and could only run back and forth on the side. He also had a lot of fun. When she was tired from laughing, she jumped down from the swing and followed her father home with unsteady steps. In the living room, the castle was still standing. However, compared to Murphy's crude and illegal building yesterday, the castle was now very beautiful. Yang especially bought a batch of good-looking pillows and stacked them up like sandbags. She also participated in the reconstruction of the castle last night. She excitedly brought over many dolls from her room, big and small, to help decorate the castle with vitality. However, Tong Tong had the heart to break out of prison. When Yang Yi and the others came back, the little boy stood up on the wall again. His legs were still trembling. When he saw the movement at the door, he happily stretched out his little hand and eagerly called, "Baba." It seemed that he could not change his pronunciation in a short time. Unfortunately, he could not call his father, but he could call his sister. "Little brother, I'll play with you." Cici, on the other hand, ran over excitedly. With a light step of her long legs, she jumped in and rolled behind little Swanee. Tong Tong could not support himself and sat down again. However, he was already used to this feeling and did not cry or make a fuss. He just turned his head and stared at his sister with his big eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Papa, little brother broke the book. She saw a book that had been destroyed by Tong Tong behind Tong Tong. She, who liked to preserve every item, cried out in alarm and complained to her father. The little girl felt sorry for this book. Although this book was published by Sahara Publishing House for children, it was full of childish pictures. She could not bear to look at it, but she still sat up and carefully smoothed out the crumpled pages with her small hands. Tong Tong had crushed the book. Tong Tong looked at it in a daze. Of course, he did not understand what it meant and his eyes were full of confusion. Yang Yi just looked at it and did not say anything. He brought back a batch of sample books from the publishing house for Tong Tong and Shi to read. In fact, he did not expect Tong Tong to love these books as much as his sister. Tong Tong was less than a year old, so it was impossible for him to love books. These picture books were just for him to read and feel fresh. This was the original purpose of these books. Just like Tong Tong's toys, the little guy would always clumsily break some of them as he grew up. When he grew up, he would even eliminate most of them. It was impossible for him to keep them as treasures. Of course, Yang Yi did not stop Shi from helping her brother organize these books. He liked watching the interaction between the siblings. When she organized the books and showed concern for her brother, Yang Yi felt very gratified. However, Shi was about to go to primary school, so she would not have much time to play with her brother at home. Chapter 8:25. The day of registration had finally arrived. She had been looking forward to it. The little girl had thought that going to primary school would be the same as going to kindergarten. Early in the morning, she carried her little bag energetically, waiting for her father to bring her to meet her little friends. The little girl had also been dolled up by her mother today. Not only did she wear her favorite little white dress, she even tied her hair into a double-layered princess hairstyle. Paired with the dress, she looked exceptionally fresh and adorable. However, there was only one chance to dress like this, because after registering for school and collecting the school uniform, she would not be able to wear her beautiful clothes to school in the future. Why are you in such a hurry to carry your bag? Xian Air and her mother aren't here yet. Give the bag to Daddy. Yang Yi was still worried that the straps of the new bag would hurt his daughter's little shoulders, so he wanted to help her carry it. However, She giggled and ran off with her little bag, unwilling to put it down. Daddy, you haven't made me lunch yet. The little girl suddenly remembered that last time, her father had not given her a lunchbox, and she had almost gone hungry in kindergarten. This morning, we can go home after registering for school, collecting our books and uniforms, and meeting your teachers and classmates. There's no need to eat in school. Yang Yi said, "All right, you don't have to bring food to school in the future, because Huijia Primary School has a cafeteria. After school starts, listen to the teacher's arrangements at noon and gather in school to eat the school food and rest. When school ends in the afternoon, Daddy will come and pick you up." She listened blankly, and did not have much of a reaction. She felt that there was no difference. Wasn't it just eating in school? After a while, Wu Jingjing brought over a similarly freshly dressed Lan Xian. During this time, Lan Hao Kai had been on a business trip again, but it was not for business matters. As one of the richest men in Zhongqing, he also had a bit of a political identity, so he had to follow some business people representing Zhongqing to a meeting in Beijing. Boss Lan really couldn't get away from this kind of thing. He could only regretfully miss the important day of his daughter's primary school. Yang Yi drove the larger nanny van. Of course, Shi and Lan Xian sat together. Wu Jingjing and Murphy also sat together. They chatted and laughed as they teased Tong Tong. In contrast, Yang Yi, who was quietly driving in front, looked like a real chauffeur. However, when Wu Jingjing and Murphy were gossiping, they still had to ask Yang Yi. "Yang Yi, I heard from Lao Lan that the 5 kids are not in the same class. Only Shi and Xian Air are in the same class, right?" Wu Jingjing asked. Yes, I was looking for someone to help, but they said that it was difficult to arrange for the 5 kids. They could only try to arrange for Shi and Xin Er to be in the same class. Yang Yi said, one of the school board members personally called to explain to me that if the kids are all in the same class when they go to primary school, it will not be good for their growth. If the 5 kids play together wherever they go, it will be easy for them to isolate the other students, and it will be easy for them to be isolated by the other students. Children of this age should make more friends. I think it makes sense. Murphy nodded and said to Wu Jingjing, I think so too. When they reach primary school, they should broaden their circle of friends. Moreover, even if they are not in the same class, as long as they are in the same school, I think they can still play together often. I don't care. Lao Lan said that Xin Er only needs to be in the same class as Shi. He doesn't care about the others. Wu Jingjing smiled and said, I'm just curious how the other parents will react when they know. Like Wu Yu and Teacher Nan. Although Wu Jingjing said this in private, it still seemed a little utilitarian and a little cruel, but it was normal. Who wouldn't want their children to be good? You can't expect everyone to be universal. The other 3 families all expressed their understanding of the situation. They didn't even care about the problem of not being in the same class. They also thought about their own children. Only their own children could get a good education. Why would they care about other children's situation? The world of adults was a little complicated, but the world of children was much simpler. After she arrived at school, she opened her eyes wide and looked around for her friends. Huijia Primary School reported today. It was very crowded and lively. Looking for someone here was like looking for a needle in a haystack. However, Shi still found Yang Luoqi. She and Yang Luoqi held hands and jumped happily. Cici, my mother said that I'm in class 6. We're not in the same class. After Yang Luoqi was happy, she remembered this and looked at Cici with a sad expression. I am in class 3. Xin Er is also in class 3. But my dad said that it doesn't matter if we are not in the same class because we are very close to each other. I can go to your class and play with you. She said cheerfully. Then if we are not in the same class, are we still good friends? Yang Luoqi asked nervously. 100 of us are good friends. She stretched out her 2 little hands and innocently gestured. She originally wanted to say 100%. This was a new word she learned from her dad. However, she didn't understand what 100% meant, so she pretended to know and changed it. 100 of us are good friends. Yang Luoqi got the confirmation and became happy again. However, she also didn't understand the meaning of 100. She just thought that it was very funny. So she grabbed Shi's hand and laughed. Murphy and Wu Jingjing, who were wearing sunglasses, stood quietly on the side, watching the children play. Yang Yi went to help them get the books and uniforms. However, Murphy and the others' peace was soon broken. Isn't this Mo Fei? A pleasantly surprised voice came over. The source of the voice was a young mother in her 20s. She was walking with her child and inadvertently saw Murphy wearing sunglasses. Originally, her attention was on her son, so she didn't recognize Murphy at first glance. However, Murphy was tall. She was taller than Wu Jingjing even without wearing high heels. Even if she wore sunglasses to disguise herself, her image and temperament seemed out of place among ordinary mothers. How could there be a mother who was so beautiful and elegant? How could there be a mother who had such a cold temperament but looked so elegant? Everyone loved beauty, including women. She couldn't help but look at Mo Fei again. Maybe she just wanted to ask for some advice from Mo Fei on how to make up. But she didn't expect that she would recognize Mo Fei at first glance. Murphy was a little surprised. She turned her head to look at the other party. It's really you. Murphy, I'm your fan. I bought all your albums and CDs. The young mother was so excited that she forgot about her son. She took a step forward and whispered in embarrassment. Chapter 8:26. Fortunately, this mommy fan was still a reasonable fan. After expressing her excitement, she took into consideration that her son was watching from behind. She did not want to appear too infatuated, so she blushed and asked Murphy if she could take a photo with her. Murphy looked around and realized that their actions did not attract too much attention. She smiled faintly and agreed to the fan's request. "But please don't make it public." I understand. She nodded excitedly. She took out her phone and said, "I won't tell anyone. I don't want to affect you. Will you help to take the photo?" The mommy fan was not satisfied with the photo she took with Murphy. She even dragged her son to take a photo with Murphy. "Sigh, I really didn't expect to meet you here. I didn't even bring a pen and paper. Otherwise, I would have asked for your autograph. Sigh, I really like your songs. I even bought your latest song, Diamonds," the mommy fan said emotionally as she held onto her phone. As she spoke, she unknowingly started to address Murphy respectfully. "It's my honor to be liked by all of you." Murphy looked at such a cute fan and was actually quite touched. She gave her a big hug and said gently, "It's not that. It's mainly because your songs are good. I've had the dream of being a singer since I was young, but that dream did not come true in the end. Now, I really like your songs. You sing so well," the mommy fan said emotionally. "If you like singing, you can participate in China's Top Voice," Murphy said kindly. "Although this season's audition has ended, you can still practice and try to participate in next year's audition. Don't give up if you have a dream. Give it a try." The mommy fan waved her hand embarrassedly and said with a smile, "How can I do that? Actually, it's just a thought. I don't sing well. My friends all say that it's fine if I sing well. If I don't sing well, I'll be a microphone hog every time I go to the KTV." Murphy was stunned for a moment. She could only smile awkwardly and politely. "Mom, my hair is a little messy here. Help me fix it." At this moment, she, who was chatting with her friends, ran over. She pointed to the fluffy hair on the back of her head and said in a crisp voice, "This is she." The mother fans were pleasantly surprised again. Of course, she could recognize she. Only now did she realize what was going on. That's right. Today was Huijia Primary School's enrollment day. If Murphy didn't come here for her child's enrollment, what else could she be here for? Of course, now that Tong Tong was in Wu Jingjing's arms, she did not notice it. Otherwise, she would be even more excited. It was only then that she saw this unfamiliar auntie. With her mother's reminder, she snuggled up to her mother and called out obediently, "Hello, auntie." "Hello, she." The mother fan's eyes lit up like light bulbs. She looked at she as if she was looking at her own daughter-in-law. She was inexplicably happy and said, "Hey Murphy, she is really the same as in the photos. She's so beautiful, well-behaved, and sensible." "No, you don't know how mischievous she is usually." Murphy was like most mothers. Although she was happy in her heart, she was still very embarrassed to belittle her child. "I'm not mischievous." She disagreed. Fortunately, the mother fan still had to take her son to collect his books. She reluctantly said goodbye to Murphy. "Our Dabao is so lucky to be in the same school as your child." Murphy could only respond with a smile. When she left, she looked back 3 times with every step she took. Once was to look at Murphy, and twice was to look at she. This mother fans did not leave a deep impression on Yang Yi and Murphy. They were already used to bumping into fans like this. However, when Yang Yi came back with his books and school uniform, he felt that he had been a little negligent when he heard Murphy's words. "Why don't you and Mommy go back to the car first? After she finishes her class meeting, I'll take her to meet you guys." Yang Yi smiled and said, "Anyway, I heard from others that many parents have to stand outside during the class meeting. There can't be too many parents sitting inside. It's not convenient for you and Mommy to be crowded inside." Murphy did not have any objections. She accompanied she to register, which could be considered as fulfilling one of her wishes. There was no need to accompany her throughout the whole process. Murphy let Yang-yi carry Tong Tong. She squatted down and smiled as she tidied up her daughter's little skirt. She said gently, "Shi, Mom is waiting for you outside. You're a primary school student from today onwards. You have to behave well." "I know." She was still immersed in the lively atmosphere of the new environment, so she responded crisply. The little girl looked at her mother with big eyes that were like clear autumn ripples. Under the bright morning sun, they were crystal clear and translucent. As her gaze moved, it added a bit of liveliness. Yang Yi's face was not so easily recognized. After he found a seat for Shi in the classroom, he walked to the back of the classroom and stood with the other parents. There were many people, so it was somewhat crowded. Yang Yi smiled and nodded at others in a friendly manner, but no one called out his name. "Only one person from your family came?" There was also a slightly older uncle parent who asked with concern, "Didn't the child's mother come?" "She came. Seeing that there was not enough space, I asked her to go back to the car and wait. We have a little one, so we can't take care of her." Yang Yi responded with a smile. Although it was the first time they had met, they would be the parents of their children's classmates in the future, so they still greeted each other warmly. "My surname is Wang, and my name is Wang Hongwei." The boy with a crew cut sitting on the left of the third row in the second row is my son. The uncle stretched out his hand. When he introduced his son, his face was flushed. "What's your surname?" Now that Yang Yi's personality had been thoroughly honed, he could integrate into the world of ordinary people. Since the uncle had introduced himself in such a friendly manner, Yang Yi did not stand out. He shook the uncle's hand and smiled. "My surname is Yang. My daughter is from my family." Yang Yi did not introduce Shi to the uncle. "Humph, boys, forget it." Adults had their own social interactions, and children had their own children's world. Shi sat quietly in her seat for less than a minute. She could not help but move her little butt and turn around to look at her father. Although her father did not pay attention to her and was chatting with others, Shi did not mind. She saw that her father was not far behind her, so she calmed down and curiously looked at the desk and classroom. The classroom of an elementary school was completely different from that of a kindergarten. The classroom of a kindergarten was free. The desks could be moved, arranged neatly, or formed into a circle. Most of the time, the teachers would only bring the children to play games in the open space. However, the desks in an elementary school were arranged neatly in 4 rows and 8 columns. Moreover, most of the desks and chairs were made of cool iron. The desks were higher, and so were the chairs, which were more suitable for sitting upright and writing. There were lockers at the back of the classroom, and there was also a large blackboard with the blackboard of the previous class. There was also a large blackboard and a podium in front of the classroom. She felt that these were all very new. Because in the kindergarten, the blackboard was not fixed to the wall. She looked left and right, and along the way, she looked at the new classmates around her. Not to mention Lon Xin, who was sitting next to her, the other classmates all had different expressions. Although everyone was dressed up neatly and beautifully, not everyone was as interested in school as she. Some children could not sit still and ran to the back, crying and begging their parents to take them home. Of course, they were quickly dragged back, and could only stay in their seats and wipe their tears. There were also some children who could not sit still. They ran around the seats and shouted, as if they were very familiar with the friends they had just met. In contrast, Lon Xin was much calmer. She was neither happy nor sad. She sat in her chair casually, like a miniature version of Lans Hao Kai. The little girl was bored for a while, then suddenly turned her head and whispered to Shi, "Do you have anything delicious to eat?" "I'm hungry." Shi blinked her big eyes, shook her head, and said, "Papa said that we don't have to bring lunch to school." In fact, Lon Xin just felt bored and wanted to eat snacks to pass the time. However, they did not have a chance to continue talking. They heard the bell ring, and the female teacher who was talking to some parents outside the classroom just now came in. Shi and Lon Xin, who had received a good education in Springfield Kindergarten, reacted and sat up straight. Their small waists were straight, and they obediently put their small hands on their legs. Chapter 8:27. The campus, which had been noisy just now, gradually quieted down with the sound of the bell. If one was a little further away from the teaching buildings, one could feel that the entire campus seemed to have returned to the seclusion of the holidays at some point. The sun at the end of summer and the beginning of autumn baked the earth. The weeds in the green belt hung their heads lazily, and the leaves that were gradually turning yellow withered listlessly between the branches. When the wind blew, the rustling sound between the leaves was not as clear as before. The pavilion also quieted down, leaving only scattered bottles and paper. These were the remains of the chaos from before. However, in each teaching building, it was another scene. It was as if the vitality of the entire school had gathered together. The cute little fellows sat in rows, their bright eyes filled with curiosity and anticipation for the future. Li Ruolin walked into the classroom with a smile. When she saw the children who had been quite obedient on the first day, she could not help but feel a surge of enthusiasm in her heart. In the next 6 years, I will witness the growth of these children. Although Li Ruolin believed that the obedience and quietness of these little fellows would not last long, she still liked these little cuties very much. They were all pure and ignorant pieces of white paper. Teaching them, compared to the 5th and 6th grade children she had taught before, could stimulate the teacher's sense of accomplishment. "Hello, children." Li Ruolin put down the things in her hands and greeted the children with a smile. "Hello, teacher." The response was sparse. Some of the children did not know how to respond, and the children who knew how to responded in unison. Li Ruolin did not care. She wrote her name on the blackboard and kindly asked the children to call her teacher Li. While Li Ruolin was introducing herself and telling them about her beautiful wishes for the new semester, she was also looking around the classroom. Her gaze gently fell on the faces of each child one by one, letting them feel her attention. "This child is so beautiful." When Li Ruolin saw she with red lips, white teeth, and picturesque features, she could not help but praise her in her heart. "She's so delicate and lovely at such a young age. When she grows up, won't she be devastatingly beautiful?" However, Li Ruolin was still more curious about the genius girl that she could not forget, Yang Shi. After looking around, Li Ruolin found a Yang Shi that matched the image in her mind, a quiet little girl with glasses sitting on the far left of the second row. This was an interesting guessing game. Li Ruolin was very curious if she had guessed correctly. "Next, Teacher Li will read out the names of the children in our class. How about this? Let's make an agreement." When the teacher calls out a child's name, the child whose name is called has to shout and stand up, okay? Teacher wants to recognize each of your names and appearances. Li Ruolin said with a smile. "Okay." At this moment, the children's response was much louder. There were also some who were in a daze and did not respond. Their parents behind them looked anxious and wanted to answer for them. Li Ruolin began to read out the names. "Chao Ruolin. Here." The first name that was read out received a clear response. However, Li Ruolin was a little embarrassed because she saw that the girl who stood up and shouted was the quiet little girl who wore glasses at such a young age. "She's not Yang Shi," Li Ruolin muttered in her heart. However, she did not delay on the surface. She still praised her with a smile. "Very good." Chao Ruolin reacted very quickly. Moreover, she stood up according to the teacher's instructions. She performed very well. Everyone should learn from Chao Ruolin. The girl with glasses named Chao Ruolin was still standing. Her face was red. She did not know if she was shy or excited after being praised by the teacher. She did not dare to move until the teacher reminded her. Only then did she sit down. Of course, Li Ruolin's roll call was not just to confirm her guess. She also wanted to recognize the students in the class so that she could call out their names in the subsequent lessons. A string of names was read down. Lan Xian was called, but it was not Shi's turn for a long time. The little girl was a little restless in her seat. "Why didn't the teacher call my name?" Shi's little head was very confused. Her little hand was placed on the table. She had been ready to raise it for a long time. She could not help but turn her head back to look at her father. However, this time, she saw her father's fingers gesturing, one circle after another. What did Papa mean? Yang Yi was telling Shi to turn back and listen to the teacher carefully. She could not look around. However, Shi, who had been troubled by the fact that her name had not been called, did not have time to think. She could not understand. Wang Lei. At this time, Yang Yi was also interrupted. Wang Hongwei, who had just talked to him, was pointing to his chest with some pride to his friends around him and saying, "My son, Wang Lei is my son." In fact, the teacher's name list was arranged according to the first letter of the pinyin of the surname. Shi's surname was almost at the bottom, but since the teacher had already called out the Wang surname, it should be Shi's turn soon. Finally, after a few children were called out, the name Yang Shi was called out by Li Rulin with anticipation. Shi had been waiting for a long time, so her reaction was naturally very fast. She stood up from her seat and called out in a clear voice, "Here." Li Rulin saw Shi stand up and could not help but open her mouth in surprise. "It's actually her?" Li Rulin looked at Shi's lively eyes and sighed in her heart. This child, how did their family raise her? She's beautiful and smart. She stood up and also received the attention of the whole class. Of course, the little girl was also sized up by the parents behind her. Originally, Shi did not stand out when she was sitting in her seat. Now that she stood up, her slender figure, beautiful clothes, and delicate face made her the focus of everyone's attention. "Ske, this girl is amazing. Her family must be very good. She's been raised like a princess since she was young." Uncle Wang Hongwei was talking to Yang Yi again. He was so focused on bragging about his son that he did not remember that Yang Yi had introduced himself as a Yang. Yang Yi could only smile politely at the other party and did not reply. Of course, the parents only saw the back of Shi. They only saw what Shi's face looked like when she turned around to look for her father. However, even so, Shi's height was still enough to shock many parents, including Li Rulin. Shi, who was only 6 years old, was already 1.27 meters tall. Although she was still a little short of Lu Weisha's 1.3 meters, compared to the students in the class who were generally 1.11 to 1.2 meters tall, Shi was indeed much taller. Shi was not used to being stared at by everyone in such a surprised manner. Moreover, she was more concerned about Teacher Li's evaluation of her. The little girl felt that her reaction was quite fast. Why didn't the teacher praise her at all? Li Rulin saw Shi's anxious little eyes and realized that she had lost her composure. She quickly restrained her spirit and smiled. "Okay, thank you, Shi. You did well too. You can sit down now. Continue to work hard in the future." Shi finally sat down in satisfaction. This was only the first class meeting for the new students. Li Rulin did not delay for too long. After briefly explaining the teaching plan for this semester and the content that required the parents' cooperation, the class meeting ended. "Goodbye, Teacher Li." The children also left one after another. Li Rulin stood at the door and said goodbye to each of the children. Her memory seemed to be quite good. After reciting the names just now, she could now call out the names of each child at the door. This instantly shortened the distance between her and the students. Some parents deliberately lingered behind. They wanted to find an opportunity to chat more with the form teacher, build a relationship, or try to fight for something for their children. Yang Yi, on the other hand, did not have such thoughts. He left with Cici early on. "Goodbye, Teacher Li." She was still very obedient. Her father held her right hand. She waved with her left hand and said goodbye to the teacher. "Goodbye, Shi." Li Rulin glanced at Yang Yi and smiled as she patted Shi's little head. Li Rulin muttered in her heart, as expected, her father is also very tall and quite imposing. Could he be a diplomat? Thinking of this, Li Rulin could not help but smile at Yang Yi and say, "Yang Shi's father. Just call me Yang Yi." Yang Yi nodded at the other party. This name sounded a little familiar. Li Rulan had seen Yang Yi's name before. However, although she watched TV, she never chased after celebrities, so she did not recognize it. Now that she heard it, it sounded a little familiar. Li Rulan smiled and said, "Okay, Yang Yi. I've seen your daughter's report card." At that time, the invigilator gave a very high evaluation and said that she was very smart. Yang Yi was stunned for a moment. He put his big hand on his daughter's shoulder and said with a smile, "Is that so? Thank you for your compliment. But don't keep praising her like this. I'm afraid that her tail will curl up. Haha. It's okay. I believe that she will study hard in the future. She's a good child." Li Rulan also laughed. Chapter 8:28. The parents and children left the school one after another. However, Li Rulan and the other first-grade teachers were not able to rest yet. They still had a meeting in the afternoon. They had to set up a SNS parent group on the computer, inform the parents to join the group, and so on. There was a lot of work. "How are the students in your class?" Lu Xianxian and Li Rulan worked at the same desk. She asked gossipily, "Have you seen that genius?" Li Rulan nodded and smiled. "You definitely won't be able to guess what that she looks like." "Sigh, what can a 6 or 7-year-old child look like? Round head, round face, cute and innocent. Isn't everyone the same? You're still keeping me in suspense." Lu Xianxian curled her lips. Li Rulan shook her head. "Just say it." Lu Xianxian helplessly replied. Her heart was being scratched by Su Tao's words. "She's really beautiful. Let me tell you, her family must be a diplomat. Her family conditions must be very good. She raised a child. She's tall and beautiful. Her skin is so good that it can be broken by the wind," Li Rulan said with some envy. "Moreover, she's quiet and obedient. Everyone loves her." F***ck. Lu Xianxian, the female hooligan, could not help but curse. "Smart and good-looking. Are you still giving others a way out? What can we do? Maybe the child has been drinking nutritious milk without additives since she was young." Li Rulan sighed. "That's true. Her family is a diplomat. They can get some good things." Lu Xianxian shook her head, indicating that she was not envious. Not at all. In the evening, Li Rulan and Lu Xianxian finished their work and invited each other to go home together. Li Rulan rode her electric scooter and slowly drove Lu Xianxian to the school gate. Electric scooters were also considered a characteristic of their old city area. As mentioned earlier, before the Wuhu district's renovation was completed, this scooter could not be completely banned. "Why is there a group of people at the gate?" Lu Xuanxuan's eyes were sharp as she muttered to Li Rulan. "I don't know. Are they here to cause trouble?" Li Rulan also felt strange. Their school had the best reputation among the private schools, and their management was also the strictest. Basically, outsiders were not allowed to enter, and the students were not allowed to fight or cause trouble. If there was, the lighter punishment would be to call the parents, and the heavier punishment would be to expel them directly. In addition, the quality of the students was generally very high. Huijia Primary School basically did not have any hooligans causing trouble at the school. When Li Rulan's electric scooter passed, a security guard opened a small door and let them out. Only then did they hear the crowd arguing with the school security guard. "It's a reporter." Li Rulan drove carefully. She only inadvertently caught a glimpse of those people's cameras and knew their identities. "It's the reporters. I heard them shouting. It seems like they want to interview our freshman teachers." Lu Xianxian whispered into Li Rulan's ear, "I think that if they treat me to a meal, I can consider answering a few of their questions." "Are you crazy? The school strictly forbids teachers from leaking student information to outsiders. If they find out, they will be expelled." Li Rulan was shocked and said hurriedly, "Hee, I was just kidding. Don't be so serious." Lu Xianxian laughed indecently. "They are definitely not interviewing me. I just heard that there is a big star among the parents of the freshman called Murphy. We don't have such a parent in our class. These reporters, or to be exact, paparazzi, were attracted by the photo of Murphy that the parent had posted. In the end, the mother fan could not hold back her excitement and sent the photo to micro-broadcasting. She also tagged Murphy's global fan club, which was spontaneously formed by the fans, on the micro-broadcasting account. Naturally, it was forwarded by them. Now, the whole world knew that Murphy had brought Shi to enroll in school. The paparazzi who were based in Jiangqing reacted a little slower, but they still managed to rush to Huijia Primary School at the last minute. We don't have such a parent in our class either. Li Ruolin laughed. We don't even have a student with the surname Mo in our class, let alone a star's parent. Lu Xianxian was similar to Li Ruolin. She liked to watch TV, but she never chased after celebrities. Therefore, when she heard Murphy's name, her reaction was not that strong. However, a woman's nature of gossip still made her take out her phone and search in the back seat. After a while, Lu Xianxian looked up with a strange expression. Teacher Li, the genius in your class is called Yang Shi. Did I remember wrongly? Yes, you told me at the beginning. Li Ruolin replied, puzzled. Her father, is he called Yang Yi? Lu Xuanxuan's expression became more and more strange. The tall and steady man's magnetic voice rang in Li Ruolin's mind. You can call me Yang Yi. Yes. How did you know? Li Ruolin asked in surprise. F***CK. The female hooligan cursed again and also called Li Ruolin's nickname. Lon, you've hit the jackpot. You even said that Murphy isn't the parent of your class. You mean? Murphy is a woman. She's a very famous female singer. She went on a foreign program not long ago and sang an English song. I even showed you that video. Li Ruolin had only seen the video of Murphy singing and had never seen Murphy in person. However, she still connected the dots with Lu Xuanxuan's words and asked in surprise, You mean, Yang Shi is Murphy's daughter? Their residence was not far away. As they chatted, they soon arrived home. As soon as Li Ruolin's car stopped, Lu Xianxian could not wait to hand over her phone and said, Is this the smart and beautiful Yang Shi you were talking about? Li Ruolin took it and recognized Shi in the photo at first glance. Although the little girl in the photo was wearing a different kind of school uniform and looked a little depressed, there was no mistake. It was the Shi she saw this morning. It's her, but she should be a little older than this photo. She's a lot taller. Li Ruolin nodded and said strangely, Why do you have a photo of her? Is she really the child of that celebrity? It's not just the child of a celebrity. Lu Xianxian sighed. Her father is a celebrity, and this child is also a celebrity. Their whole family is a celebrity. After a while, the two of them chattered as they walked into the teacher's apartment where they lived. Li Ruolin was about to kneel down. Only then did she understand that her student was so amazing. She had already acted in a movie at such a young age. The photo just now was a stills photo. She's still a diplomat. Lu Xianxian laughed and laughed. How would I know? I heard you say that she speaks English so well, so I guessed it myself. Li Ruolin rolled her eyes and said. Lu Xianxian was very gossipy. Not only did she have a deep understanding of the content of Murphy and Yang Yi's Chengdu encyclopedia, but she also dug out some of Shi's recent reports to read. Lon, come here. Look at this. Lu Xianxian pulled Li Ruolin over and pointed at her computer screen. The computer was playing a video. She was talking to Prada Li Ruolin and the others could not understand, but they could understand the Chinese subtitles. Her English is really good. Li Ruolin sighed. The amazing one is the child. She's so young, but she's not afraid at all on stage. She's chatting so naturally with this black man. Lu Xianxian praised. Next, they were stunned as they watched she dance the shuffle dance to the accompaniment of Seve. No wonder she's a star, but she has more skill points than us. Lu Xianxian sighed. You played too many games during the summer vacation, right? Li Ruolin could not help but laugh. Anyway, looking at her, I feel that I've lived for more than 20 years in vain. Lu Xianxian covered her head and pretended to cry. Do you know what I'm thinking? Li Rulan calmed down from the initial surprise, shock, and disbelief and laughed. What are you thinking? Lu Xianxian asked. I used to think that Yang Shi could be the class's study committee member. Li Rulan laughed. Now I think that the entertainment committee member is quite suitable for her. In the future, we won't have to worry about the class's programs. Isn't this too much of a waste? Such an excellent child. If it were me, I would directly make her the class monitor. Lu Xianxian said domineeringly. That's not necessary. You have to give the child room for improvement. Li Rulan said. At this time, she also remembered what Yang Yi said before. Don't keep praising her like this. I'm afraid her tail will be raised. Her parents were not joking. They were serious. Yang Shi was really too excellent. Room for improvement? I think you're deliberately suppressing others. Lu Xianxian curled her lips and said, I want to suppress her, but I can't use the word suppress. I should say that I'm guiding her correctly. Li Rulan was a language teacher. Unlike the female hooligan, who was a math teacher, she did not use words carelessly. She said carefully, the more excellent a child is, the more you need to guide her correctly so that she can understand the importance of hard work. Chapter 829. Yang Yi's main purpose of launching The Voice of China was to help Qianli Chuanshu, but he did not expect that Murphy herself would become a die-hard fan of the show. During the first episode of the show, Murphy was on the plane and did not watch the broadcast. This time, she did not miss the second episode. During the day, she would bring Shi to school, and at night, she would wait in front of the TV, waiting for the broadcast of the show. Yang Yi was beside the castle, on the coffee table that had been moved out. Together with his daughter, he was handing her a few new textbook bags and book covers. If you want the textbooks to be as new and nice as they are now, you have to wrap them up with paper. Yang Yi held a large piece of high-quality paper that was not cheaper than the textbooks as he spoke to Shi. This skill was mastered by Yang Yi's predecessor when he was young. At that time, his family was poor and Yang Chongguei did not have the money to buy many books for him and his brother. When Yang Yi was in primary school, Yang Huan was not even born yet. Therefore, Yang Yi's textbooks had to be carefully taken care of so that he could continue using them when he was in school. This could save him a lot of tuition fees. His nimble mother, Dong Yu Yi, taught Yang Yi how to wrap the books, and Yang Yi did not disappoint. Not only did he wrap the books well, but he also took good care of the textbooks. From the start of the semester until the end of the semester, he did not pick up a pen to write on the textbooks. When Yang Yi used them, they were still brand new. In the past, the purpose of wrapping the books was to ensure that the textbooks could be recycled. Now, Yang Yi's motive for wrapping the books for Shi had changed. He hoped that the textbooks could be kept clean and tidy, and it would be best if the corners did not curl up. Cici stood at the side and watched with interest. Her two little hands were pressed on the coffee table. Of course, she couldn't sit still, and she didn't want to stand still either. Her body swayed gently with her little butt. You don't want the textbooks to become ugly after a few days of use, right? Yang Yi asked Shi with a smile as he measured the books carefully. Don't become ugly. Of course. Shi shook her head. She giggled and said, I'm not your little brother. Only a little brother would break a book. Murphy couldn't help but laugh when she heard that. It's your brother's fault again. Mr. Yang, let me tell you, I don't object to you wrapping Shi's books, but don't let her be like you. Everything has to be symmetrical, neat, and tidy. Shi turned around and snuggled up to her father, making a face at her mother. She liked to see her parents bickering with each other. Of course, her father always lost. Her father always seemed to be unable to out-talk her mother. Shi, who pitied her father, would step forward bravely at this time. Yang Yi turned around and glanced at Tong Tong, who was still playing in the castle. The little guy now had a playmate. Because of the enclosed effect of his castle, Xiao Guai and the other cats were attracted. The originally maverick cats all came over and found their own comfortable places on the soft pillows. When your little brother grows up, he will also know how to take care of books. Yang Yi laughed. If he doesn't understand, as his elder sister, you should teach him a lesson. Tell him, little brother, how can you be so naughty? You've ruined the books. She felt that her father's imitation of her tone was very interesting. She couldn't help but giggle. She laughed so hard that she shook and fell on her father's body crookedly. The book cover that Yang Yi wrapped was still very beautiful. After wrapping it, the book cover seemed to have been redone. It became a very pure color. There was a white stripe on the top and a khaki color on the bottom. The ratio of white to khaki was about 1:3. It seemed that the whole book's image and temperament had been improved. Does it look good? Yang Yi wrapped the first textbook and handed it to Shi. It looks good. The little girl happily took it and touched the cover that was slightly rough but did not lose its smoothness and luster. She replied crisply. She looked as if she couldn't bear to part with it. Yang Yi's heart was filled with a sense of accomplishment. It's not done yet. Yang Yi asked Shi for the wrapped book. Then, Yang Yi picked up a small hard brush that he had prepared on the table. He dipped it in the white paint that he had already mixed. In the middle of the cover, where the khaki background was, he wrote the word Chinese in small script. Yang Yi's calligraphy skills were average, but he could still fool ordinary people. So, with this line of white words, the cover was improved by a level. It gave people the illusion that it was the cover of a Chinese textbook. Do you want to write your name here? Yang Yi was still unsatisfied. He pointed at the word Chinese and laughed. Yes, and then draw a flower here. It'll look good. She snuggled into her father's arms and said excitedly. Yang Yi was a little surprised. He didn't expect his daughter to be able to draw inferences and give him ideas. Just as the father and daughter were wrapping up the book cover, the second episode of China's Top Voice began. Murphy clapped her hands happily. She quickly sat in the executive chair that she had moved from Yang Yi's study room. She turned around with her back facing the TV and turned up the volume with the remote control. Then, she said to Yang Yi with a smile, "Neither of you can give me any hints. I want to choose blindly." Shi's attention was attracted by her mother. She turned her head and watched with interest. Yang Yi shrugged and laughed. "Since you're so interested, why don't I let you be a mentor for the next season? I saw that you haven't made a comeback this season and didn't have time to go, so I didn't arrange for you. I think I'll pass. Compared to mentor Lin Qitian, mentor Feng Huiwen, and mentor Luo Jian, my qualifications are too lacking. I've even consulted with mentor Luo Jian before. How am I qualified to be on the same level as him and say that I want to be a mentor?" Murphy waved her hand. "That's hard to say. You're also one of the best singers in the Chinese music industry. Moreover, your fame has spread overseas. Who dares to say that you're not qualified?" Yang Yi laughed and said, "Moreover, this is our family's show. It's up to me whether I let you be on it or not." "How can that be? It'll ruin the show. I hope that this show can really help those who can sing well. If I want to be on this show, I'll have to work hard for a few more years. I'll have to at least be as famous and capable as Eason." Murphy was a little annoyed. "Then we'll talk about it in a few years. I have other shows for you anyway." Yang Yi laughed. "Okay. Let's watch the show." Murphy giggled and said, "I think it's quite interesting to be an audience member. I'll choose blindly in front of the TV. No one knows. Then we'll guess which contestant will go to which mentor's team, okay? Do you want to bet with me? If you want to bet, you'll have to have something at stake." Yang Yi laughed and said, "I can assure you that I don't know anything about the results of the show. I didn't ask them. What do you want to bet on?" Murphy looked over curiously. "Tonight." Yang Yi looked at Shi beside him. After confirming that she wasn't looking at him, he smirked and gestured with Murphy to take off his clothes. Whoever guesses more wrong will perform this dance, okay? Murphy rubbed her face and blushed. She said shyly, "Do you want to die? You're saying this in front of the child. What are you guys talking about?" She looked innocent. Daddy and Mommy said that whoever guesses more wrong tonight will have to perform the onion-flinging dance for the other party. Dee-da-dee-da-dee. Yong-yi deliberately waved his hands and said, "Hee hee hee hee." She was confused and was amused by her father. Chapter 830. Yang-yi mentioned the striptease dance because a few days ago, when he and Murphy were still in the United States, they watched a movie together in the bedroom on the farm. There was an extremely enchanting scene in the movie. Murphy turned her head and saw Yang-yi's eyes inadvertently revealing an expression of admiration. She decisively became jealous and somewhat unconvinced. She said, "Who doesn't know this dance? Isn't it just taking off all of it?" However, when Yang-yi's index finger was moved and wanted her to perform a scene, the music was already playing. Murphy was embarrassed and evaded him by beating around the bush. But Yang-yi could not forget it. "Do you want to do it? If I lose, I'll also dance." Yang-yi deliberately raised his eyebrows at Murphy, full of provocation. "So arrogant? How could it be?" Murphy bit her lower lip, angrily glared at Yang-yi, and snorted, "Let's do it. I also want to dance, I also want to dance." She excitedly stood up from her father's arms and said, "I also know how to do this." This super simple spring onion dance was taught to her by Yang-yi before. "Okay, but you have to dance first." Yang-yi rubbed Shi's little head and said with a smile, "Because the TV will be broadcast until very late, and you still need to sleep." "Then Papa, you play the beat for me." The little girl really believed that her parents were going to do the spring onion dance. She happily ran to her brother's castle and picked up 2 pillow towels to use as spring onions. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-do-do-do. Taking advantage of the fact that the program had not yet started, Yang-yi sang the accompaniment for Shi. This song was not easy to sing, and it was only because Yang-yi's extraordinary speed of speech that he managed to sing it. Although there might be some mistakes in the middle, when she heard Yang-yi's fast singing, Murphy turned around and threw herself on the sofa beside her, laughing so hard that she was lying down. Shi, on the other hand, was very focused on dancing, swinging the pillow towels left and right up and down. That serious effort of trying to keep up with the rhythm was indescribably cute. However, Tong, who was sitting in the castle, opened his little mouth and looked at his sister in confusion. It was not known why his attention was attracted by his sister and not his father. The little guy's confused expression while drooling seemed to be saying, "Sister, are you stupid?" After a short interlude, the second episode of China's Voice began to air. The opening animation and the fast-talking commercial from the host, Super Hot, quickly cut to the end, and the first contestant took the stage. Mo Fei still played the same trick. She turned around and didn't look at the TV screen. However, she still saw the expression on Yang-yi's face as he sat on the sofa opposite her. He seemed a little surprised. "What's the matter?" Murphy asked with a smile, her heart itching. Yang-yi shifted his gaze from the TV screen to Murphy and smiled mysteriously. "I'm not telling you. Do you want to turn around and watch together?" Murphy gritted her teeth and snorted. She pouted and said, "No way, I want to choose blindly too." In fact, Yang-yi was surprised because the first contestant sang his song. The subtitles on the TV screen read, "When You're Old." Singer, Su Lu. Original singer, Murphy. Composer, Yang-yi. The contestant on stage was a girl with short black hair. She carried a guitar and looked very heroic. Like the other singers, she bowed to the audience and the musicians behind her after she went on stage. However, she did not want anyone to accompany her. She sat down on the high chair on stage and picked up her guitar. Ha ha ha. As soon as the sound of the guitar rang out, Su Lu began to use her own voice to accompany the sound. Her slightly hoarse voice, at this moment, had an inexplicable ethereal quality, one must know that these two words usually didn't go together. Just by listening to her accompaniment, the four coaches on stage started to shake their heads. They were obviously a little intoxicated. Yang Yi's eyes also showed a hint of amazement. When You're Old. Nice song. Murphy knew what song it was from the prelude, but she still gave the singer a thumbs up. She whispered to Yang Yi, "It's quite interesting to do it this way. Why didn't I think of it before?" However, she only allowed the officials to set fires and not the common people to light lamps. After she finished muttering, she waved her hand and signaled Yang Yi to stop talking and listen to the song seriously. When You're Old and Your Hair is White. Su Lu played and sang at the same time. Su Lu's singing was completely different from Murphy's. Murphy's singing of this song was relatively affectionate. It also reflected the lingering beauty of her and Yang Yi's love. Unintentionally, there was a kind of seductive ripple in her voice. But Su Lu didn't have as deep an understanding as Mo Fei. When she sang this song, she also sang it according to her own understanding. Her slightly hoarse, but still clear voice had a hint of tiredness, as if she was helpless about this kind of aging. Of course, to see her real singing skills, one had to listen to the line, "How many people have loved the time when you sang happily in your youth?" However, what surprised Yang Yi was that Su Lu did not sing this line with a high pitch like Murphy. She still maintained her own characteristics and sang this line with a slow rhythm. Although there was a touch of high pitch, it was just like a paper airplane, smoothly gliding over. "It's quite nice." Murphy gave high praise to Su Lu's adaptation. She excitedly discussed with Yang Yi, "I think singing this line in a slow way is also very interesting." At this time, a teacher had already pressed the button. The rotating chair on the television screen lit up with the red, "I choose you" light. Who turned it?" Murphy asked, unable to hold back her curiosity. Yang Yi could not keep her in suspense this time, because she, who was also watching attentively, rushed to answer, "It's Uncle Chan Yi-jie. Mom, that sister is crying." On the television, there was a close-up shot. Su Lu, who looked like a tomboy, had a trace of tears in her eyes, but she still pretended to be calm and tried her best to sing. She did not know if it was her experience singing in a bar that allowed her to cope with all kinds of unexpected situations. Although the moment Chan Yi-jie turned around, she was a little emotional, but her singing did not lose its standard. Just like before, she sang slowly and affectionately. Murphy also turned around when Su Lu sang for the second time. She was a little slower than Feng Huiwen, but she really liked Su Lu's singing. She gently clapped her hands and shook her head. Finally, the song ended, and the four teachers all turned around. Murphy still wanted to continue and said to Yang Yi, "This song is really suitable to be listened to with closed eyes. You didn't turn around, so you don't know the feeling. It's really wonderful." "Really? Then I'll try the next singer." Yang Yi laughed. After Su Lu gave a simple introduction of her name, the four teachers all rushed to give their comments. The comments here were also a kind of knowledge. There was no need to talk about the failed contestants, but for the contestants who had many teachers turning around, the teachers' comments were also a way to win over the contestants. Maybe one sentence would touch the other person's heart, and the next second, the contestant would choose you as their teacher. Now was the time for the initiative to change hands. Chan Yi-jie also said in his very ordinary Mandarin, "Miss Su's voice is very good. Although it's not the kind of voice that sings sweet songs, I like it very much because such a voice can express a kind of strong emotion when singing. Teacher Feng Huiwen, Chan Yi-jie is saying that you're not suitable for little Su." Luo Jian deliberately said, "You were the queen of sweet songs." "I didn't mean that." Chan Yi-jie hurriedly waved his hand. "It doesn't matter if you mean that. Anyway, the two of them are not suitable for each other. Little Su can choose between the three of us male teachers." Lin Qitian said cheerfully. It was rare for him to be serious. "I don't want to bother with them. Xiao Su, I want to tell you that women understand women the best. Although I sing sweet songs, I also know other singing styles. I can give you some tips on how to sing a female song." "What about them?" He. Feng Huiwen laughed. On the stage, Swords were drawn. Although these people deliberately made it so exaggerated for the effect of the show, after the director's editing, the atmosphere was indeed very tense. Su Lu, who felt that she was so lucky that she couldn't find her bearings, didn't know how to choose. "Who do you think she'll choose in the end?" Yang Yi asked. "Hurry up and choose one. Once you've placed your bet, leave." Murphy rolled her eyes at Yang Yi. After a long time, she said, "I think she'll choose Luo Jian. Teacher Luo also sings love songs. Maybe he used to be Su Lu's idol. I think she'll choose Chen Yijie. Chen Yijie's influence is still bigger now. After all, the others are not very active in the music industry now," Yang Yi said. After Yang Yi finished speaking, the TV cut to a few very short advertisements. After the advertisements, Su Lu would definitely choose. He smiled and said, "Then let's see who Su Lu will choose. Chen Yijie or Luo Jian. Or neither of them." Chapter 831. The commercials that were cut into the show after only a few minutes were not too long. 30 seconds later, the commercials from the two sponsors were over in the blink of an eye. The TV returned to the scene of China's top voice. "All right, little Su, please make your choice," Luo Jian said. Su Lu's gaze became firm. She said, "When I was learning how to sing, I listened to teacher Luo Jian's cassette tapes the most. Nanny." Yang Yi's heart skipped a beat. "Oh no, it can't be like what Murphy said, right?" Su Lu's choice was irreversible. She said sincerely, "After that, I started singing. Although I studied and learned from many seniors, teacher Luo Jian's songs left the deepest impression on me. That's why I'm so fortunate to be recognized by so many teachers. However, I still hope to join teacher Luo Jian's team. It has always been my dream to be able to receive his personal guidance." Luo Jian stood up from his seat and proudly raised 2 fingers at the other 3 regretful mentors. He then turned around and hugged Su Lu. He even said, "You know, Xiao Su, I was scared to death just now. I was afraid that you would change your tone and say that you would choose someone else after talking about your admiration for me for so long." Yang Yi did not pay attention to the latter part of the conversation. He was looking at Murphy helplessly. Murphy was showing off in front of him. She coolly made a V-shaped gesture with her right thumb and index finger under her chin. It was not a good start. Things were not looking good. As the show progressed, Shi, who was about to go to bed, was sent upstairs. Yang Yi and Murphy were still watching TV in the living room. Both of them won and lost in their bets. There were also times when both of them guessed wrong. Overall, the situation was extremely tense. It was hard to tell who would have the last laugh. Again. Before the next contestant came on stage, Murphy turned her chair around excitedly. However, she soon saw the surprise in Yang Yi's eyes. "What's wrong? Is there something special about this contestant?" Murphy could not help but ask. Yang Yi smiled gently and shook his head. He said, "I don't know how to put it. You'll know when you hear it." Mo Fei curled his lips and said, "Stop pretending." Then, a soothing guitar accompaniment sounded, and the contestants on the stage began their performances. It's guitar playing again. Why aren't the contestants using the band's accompaniment today? Those bands are much better than them. Murphy's ears were so sharp that she could tell the difference at once. However, Murphy quickly looked at Yang Yi in surprise. "Isn't this your college days? I can't believe I can hear it here." Yes, this song was the one Yang Yi previously wrote for Guazi to pick up girls at the freshman party, university days. However, compared to Yang Yi's other songs, this song was much less popular. After all, it was produced by the Hua Yi Brothers Company. Guazi, a non-professional singer, released the sound source earlier than Fairy Tale. At that time, Guazi was just a nobody. It was amazing that someone could know and choose to sing this song that was not popular. Of course, once the contestants on the stage opened their mouths, Murphy retracted her surprise. She was familiar with the voice and smiled. Isn't this 1,000 Miles Chuanshu? So they've been arranged for the second episode. Yang Yi shook his head with a smile and said, I really don't know. He was a very competent manager. Not only had he passed the program to Hong Yumin and Yun Yongfeng, but he had also let 1,000 Miles Chuanshu participate in the competition without informing the program team. Therefore, Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan on the stage were just ordinary contestants. Murphy was right. This song was indeed less popular. When Lu Xiaoshu and the rest sang it, Luo Jian and Feng Huiwen, who had their backs to the stage, were surprised. It's so good. What's this song called? I've never heard of it. Chen Yijie knew, but he was too slow to speak and Lin Qitian beat him to it. Professor Lin smiled and said, You've never heard of this song? What a pity. It's one of Yang Yi's rare folk songs. It looked like Lin Qitian had done a lot of research on Yang Yi. Yang Yi's song? Luo Jian and Feng Huiwen were surprised. However, this was not the time to chat. Listening to the song was more important. Lu Xiaoshu was the lead singer while Miao Chuan was the backup singer. Both of them had worked together for many years. Their chemistry was so good that it felt like they were one. If one did not listen carefully, it would be difficult to distinguish their voices. However, what made Yang Yi feel emotional was that Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan's singing of this song was closer to the original version. After going through that experience, Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan's voices became more emotional. Their voices were slightly hoarse, with a hint of laziness and indescribable vicissitudes of life. Even when they sang, hiding in the corner, secretly, crying, their voices revealed a pampering tone as if they had experienced the vicissitudes of life. They sang very well. Yang Yi could not help but say to Murphy, I didn't expect them to secretly practice this. I'm starting to believe that you really didn't secretly get the results and cheat. Murphy's eyes twinkled as she said to Yang Yi, Of course. I also specifically told everyone not to report to me about the program. I want to be an ordinary audience member. Yang Yi smiled and said, You're only starting to believe now. If I had the results, how could I lose so many times just now? How could I let you go? Humph, I don't believe you. You're so glib, trying to coax me into dancing. Murphy's cheeks blushed as she spoke. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan's improvement in the past 2 years was very obvious. If the beginning of the song was just to soothe the audience's ears, then when they sang What is Love, I Don't Know, they switched between high notes and falsetto. Their excellent singing skills were reflected. Bang, bang, bang. 4 lights lit up one after another. The 4 mentors' swivel chairs turned around at the same time. They pointed at each other and laughed in surprise. How many did you swivel? Murphy's heart itched unbearably. Guess. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan looked at each other. They could see the joy in each other's eyes. But the singing continued. Their work in the coffee shop allowed them to maintain a peaceful state of mind while singing. In the end, Murphy reluctantly turned around. She explained to Yang Yi, I'm too familiar with them. I don't want to choose, so I turned around in the end. Of course, for Yang Yi, the most important part was to guess which mentor Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan would choose. They must choose Chen Yijie. There's no doubt about it. Chen Yijie's singing is more helpful to them. Yang Yi rushed to say. Yang Yi felt that Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan would choose Chen Yijie, not because of his singing, but because they were more familiar with Chen Yijie. On one hand, he was Yang Yi's good friend. On the other hand, Lin Mu, and was still in Chen Yijie's company. Murphy, however, held back her laughter. Her eyes flickered and she didn't dare to look at Yang Yi. What's wrong? It's your turn to choose. Yang Yi was confused and asked with a smile. Murphy pursed her lips. She wanted to say something but stopped. Finally she said, Since you've chosen Chen Yijie, then I'll choose Lin Qitian. Yang Yi was amused and laughed. Then you'll probably lose. He firmly believed that Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan wouldn't choose Lin Qitian, because Lin Qitian had been famous for too long. Yang Yi raised his hand and snapped his fingers. He shook his head proudly. They should be the last group. If you lose, you'll have to dance tonight. Chapter 832. The news of Cece going to primary school was reported by some entertainment newspapers. However, this kind of gossip was destined to not attract much attention since there were no scandals or catfights. Therefore, Yang Yi did not even bother to respond to these reporters. He was fully focused on preparing for Shi's upcoming primary school life. The hottest news in the entertainment industry recently was none other than China's The Voice. Although this program had only been broadcast for 2 episodes, its viewership ratings had been soaring crazily. It had the potential to break the viewership ratings record for music talent shows. The more the audience watched, the more they paid attention to it. Naturally, the media flocked to it as well. This program was so popular that if any news outlet was not related to China's The Voice, they would be too embarrassed to snatch the headlines. Therefore, the netizens would be speechless when they saw news headlines like this: no worse than China's The Voice. The Great Travel Challenge premieres soon. Hu Kefi attends a sponsor's event and says she wants to participate in China's The Voice. The Great Zhou Dynasty crew has confirmed that the second male supporting lead took part in China's The Voice editions. Although the headlines were all about China's The Voice, the content of the news had nothing to do with it. Naturally, the comments below were incessant. However, these people were thick-skinned enough to take advantage of the hype. Why would they care about the scolding? Of course, the proper media were still enthusiastically reporting news related to China's The Voice. They were all trying their best to interpret the program from many different angles so that they could stand out from the vast sea of news reports. The second episode of China's Voice gave them a chance because there were many outstanding contestants in this episode. For example, Su Lu, the short-haired girl singing, had conquered many of the audience. It could even be said that she became famous overnight. Many people who heard Su Lu's performance of When You're Old all became her fans without any prior agreement. Now, on all the major social media sites and search engines, she was the most searched for. Many viewers even started to think that Su Lu was the most capable singer to win the championship. There were many outstanding contestants, and there were many stories behind these contestants. Even though China's The Voice had set up an official micro-broadcasting and official website, listing the background stories of the selected contestants that were supposed to be told on stage under their photos, the media was still not satisfied with the information that had already been released. They tried their best to search for more explosive news. There was really a reporter who managed to find one overnight, and it was published in the newspaper the next day. The origin of China's Top Voice's 4th promotion 1000 Mile Creek Tree is so strange. First of all, the first news that the reporter exposed was that Qian Li Kuanshu's previous management company was Rong Huada Management Company. The official website of China's Top Voice only mentioned that Qian Li Kuanshu was once a trainee of a management company. However, because he was unwilling to follow the unspoken rules, he was shelved. Of course, the introduction did not mention the name of the company. However, this news was not difficult to find out. Last year, Lin Mu and had caused a scene at the Xiongnan TV station's talent show. He had also exposed the big news that Rong Huada had cheated his junior brother, 1000 Miles Chuanshu. Many people still had a deep impression of it. Therefore, when the readers read up to this point in the report, they finally had a realization. So it's them. However, that was the extent of their impression. Compared to the cheated 1000 Miles Chuanshu, Tang Kai Tai, who was involved in this incident and was later known as the most cheated brat in history, left a deeper impression on the readers. This Tang Kai Tai has caused a lot of trouble. Even 1000 Miles Chuanshu was shelved by him. Luckily, they walked out of this incident. Otherwise, it would be a pity for them. They sing really well. After listening to University Days, fans who liked 1000 Miles Chuanshu expressed their opinions in the report. However, the biggest explosive point of this news was not 1000 Miles Chuanshu's past, but their present. 1000 Miles Chuanshu has signed with a new management company. It's the Hua Yi brothers. The reporter also exposed this. Perhaps many readers are not familiar with the Hua Yi brothers, but everyone is definitely familiar with the other artists in this company. Guozi, Yang Huan. That's right, they are this year's popular newcomers to variety shows, the 2 permanent members of the Limit Challenge. Now that I've spoken up to here, everyone should understand that Brother Hua Yi's character represents Yang Yi's own name. That's right, this company is opened by Yang Yi. China's The Voice is also one of the ace variety shows created by Yang Yi. With such a complicated relationship, it's almost certain that 1,000 Miles Chuan Shu will be able to advance to the next round, right? That's right, this report was not done to support China's The Voice. It came with a strong intention, clearly showing the intention to expose the dark secrets of China's The Voice. Beijing. Qianyaba. Su Lu was bidding farewell to her boss, Brother Ming. After today's program was broadcast, she would stop all her other part-time jobs and put in all her effort to join her mentor, Luo Jian's team, and receive his guidance. Similarly, there were tougher competitions waiting for her in the future. It could be said that Su Lu had embarked on a new path and was rushing towards the future she had always been looking forward to. Today was just a farewell to the past. Sister Lu, take a look at this news. A resident singer who had a pretty good relationship with Su Lu passed the phone over while looking enviously at Su Lu, who had dyed her hair back to black. He said, China's The Voice actually has shady dealings. Do you think this is real? Su Lu took a few glances and saw the report saying that there were dark secrets behind 1,000 Miles Chuan Shu's advancement. She fell silent. She had a deep impression of Qianli Kawaki because Qianli Kawaki had participated in the competition and video recording on the same day as her. Although she didn't watch Qianli Kawaki's competition, she still remembered the 2 big boys sitting quietly in the corner. It was easy to understand. After all, she only knew of this pair. But as for whether there were dark secrets behind their advancement, Su Lu could not say for sure. She had watched the program yesterday and 1,000 Miles Chuan Shu's singing was very good. Su Lu felt that it was normal for the mentor to turn around. Whether there are dark secrets or not, little Su, now that you have decided to move forward, you have to move forward with determination. Brother Ming walked over and took the phone from Su Lu's hand. He returned it to the resident singer and said to Su Lu meaningfully, if you can become the champion, that would be even better. Our Qianya Ba would be proud of you and we would be able to bask in your glory. But if you can't become the champion, then so what? If you can perform on this show with such high ratings a few more times, you will be able to gain more viewers. You will be able to sign a contract with a big record company and release an album. If you can continue, that in itself is a kind of victory. Su Lu nodded lightly at Brother Ming. The knot in her heart just now had disappeared. When 1,000 Miles Chuan Shu's identity and background were exposed, Mo Xiaowan and the rest had already prepared for it. Lu Xiaoshu and the rest signing was not something that needed to be kept a secret. Their names had already been posted on the Hua Yi brothers' official website. However, Mo Xiaowan was still a little surprised. She did not expect the reporters to find out so quickly. We will hold a press conference on Tuesday. You can arrange it. Yang Yi will personally clarify this misunderstanding to the reporters. On Monday, she will be busy on her first day of school. Mo Xiaowan walked out and went to Xiao AI's office. In addition, Micro-Broadcasting will release the explanation we have prepared. Chapter 833. It wasn't a bad thing that Shi's background was known by her homeroom teacher, Teacher Li. On the first day of class, when the teacher assigned the seats, Shi was cleverly arranged to sit in the 6th column of the 3rd row. Although she was still a little behind, if the seats were strictly divided according to height, Shi's height would basically make her sit at the very back. Lan Xin and Shi were a little different in height, so the 2 girls finally separated. Shi also welcomed a new deskmate. When she hugged her small school bag and sat down in her new seat, her new deskmate began to look at her curiously. Soon, she couldn't help but ask, "My name is Lu Xiaoyu. What's your name?" At this moment, Shi retracted her gaze from Lan Xin. Just now, the 2 girls had been communicating with their eyes. Lan Xin really didn't want to sit apart from Shi. She felt so wronged. She blinked her big eyes and looked at her deskmate. Lu Xiaoyu was a thin girl, a little like Yang Luoqi. She had 2 thin braids on her head. Of course, it was obvious that she was also quite extroverted. She had a bright smile. My name is Yang Shi. You can call me Shi Shi. She introduced her name to her deskmate seriously. Then you can also call me Little Fishy because my name sounds a lot like little fish. Lu Xiaoyu giggled. Hee, your name is so funny. Shi and the other party quickly got closer. It just so happened that the extroverted girl met chatty Shi. At first, Shi was a little embarrassed, but soon, the 2 girls began chatting enthusiastically. The first day of school seemed to pass quickly. In the afternoon, Yang Yi came to school to pick up Shi. The little girl indeed knew a lot of friends. She waved to them one by one before getting into her father's car with Lan Xian. Because the 2 families lived together, and Yang Yi came to pick up Shi every day, Lan Zhaokai simply asked Yang Yi to help pick up Lan Xian. The 2 girls went to school together, so they wouldn't be lonely. Xian, today is your first day of school. Are you used to it? Yang Yi asked with concern as he drove. Papa, you didn't even ask me. Cici, who was at the side, cried out with jealousy. Okay, I'll ask you too. I'll ask you later. Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Lan Xian pouted and said, Primary school is not fun at all. Why? She asked with some surprise. Because we can't go out to play. We have to sit in the classroom, and then there's nothing delicious to eat. At noon, there's no delicious food like Uncle Yang Yi. I want to go back to kindergarten. Lan Xian said with grievance. At noon, the school's food is not delicious? Yang Yi asked, What did you eat at noon? Not as delicious as Papa's food. At this time, Shi also nodded. However, her description was much richer than Lan Xian's. We had chicken drumsticks, broccoli, carrots, and eggs for lunch. After listening to Shi's description, Yang Yi felt that the school's nutrition was not bad. I don't like to eat vegetables. I want to eat delicious meat. Lan Xian pouted and said unhappily. There's meat. Chicken drumsticks are meat. She refuted. No, it's just a little bit. It's not enough. Lan Xian cried out with grievance. Okay, Xian has suffered in school. Tonight's dinner at Shi's house. Uncle will make delicious meat for you. Yang Yi said with a smile. Don't be sad. Eat with everyone at school. He felt that this was not a bad thing. At noon, he let Lan Xian eat less meat and more vegetables. It just happened that she could lose weight. She was not as gluttonous as Lan Xian. She could accept the school's food. Yang Yi felt that it was not a bad thing to let his daughter's stomach adapt to ordinary food. She couldn't eat fish and meat every day. If Shi's mouth was as picky as Lan Xian's, it would be easy for her to become pretentious when she grew up. As a human, we have to experience the joys and sorrows of life. We have to taste all the flavors in the world. Lan Xian felt that this compensation condition was not bad. She could go to Shi's house for dinner. The little girl finally smiled through her tears. Come on, I'll test you. Shi and Xian, you answer together. If you answer more, I'll make more delicious food for you tonight. Yang Yi asked with a smile while driving, What did you learn at school today? In order to eat delicious food, Lan Xian was particularly enthusiastic and said, There's nothing to learn. We only learned the pinyin A, O, E. Uncle Yang, you see, I know all of them. There's also mathematics. But Papa, we know all the mathematics taught by Mr. Lu. She said. You really know all of them? What did Mr. Lu teach you today? Yang Yi asked curiously. Mr. Lu asked us to count. She said, in the textbook, there are 2 little rabbits carrying backpacks and 2 little bears playing basketball. There are also 9 little birds flying in the sky. Did you say these yourself, or did Mr. Lu teach you? Yang Yi asked. Yang Yi felt that Shi's description was a little complicated. It should not be something that she could say by looking at the textbook. He, Mr. Liu asked me, and then I counted them all correctly. Then Mr. Liu counted with me and said that there were 2 little rabbits carrying backpacks. The little girl said to her father with great interest. Yang Yi looked at his daughter from the rearview mirror and could see his daughter's beaming face. Lan Xian next to him was a little confused. She did not have a good memory like Shi. Very good, Shi. In the future, in school, no matter if you understand what the teacher teaches or not, you have to listen carefully in class and actively answer the teacher's questions. Do you understand? Yang Yi praised Shi with gratification and educated her. Okay. She blinked her big eyes. What about the language class? What did you learn? Yang Yi asked. How did the teacher teach you pinyin? Speaking of this, Shi became even more excited. She loudly recited in the car, "Open your mouth, triple A." Hearing Shi recite this, Lan Xian could not help but recite it, round mouth oo, flat mouth I. After reciting it, the 2 little girls looked at each other and giggled. This rhyme was quite interesting. Looking at their alternating between complaining and being happy, Yang Yi felt relieved. At least, on the first day of class, Shi and Lan Xian seemed to adapt very quickly. They were able to keep up with the teacher's teaching progress. However, it wasn't hard to understand. After all, the kindergarten that Cici and Lanqin attended was also very good. In the kindergarten they were playing around. Although the knowledge that they learned from secondary school was a little scattered, it was enough to satisfy most of their first-grade curriculum. More importantly, in Springfield Kindergarten, the teachers cultivated a special kind of mathematical logic for the children. This allowed them to think more than other children when they were learning other things. This was especially precious for their future studies. However, since they were in primary school, it was inevitable that they would come out of the comfortable world of play in kindergarten and begin to face more and more formal learning seriously. On the first day of school, Shi and the others had to start doing their homework. Not long after returning home, Yang Yi received a homework message from Teacher Li on his mobile phone. Language homework. Children, please make pinyin alphabet cards when you get home. Not only do you have to write the letters correctly, but you also have to pronounce the 4 tones correctly. After making the alphabet cards, please read them to your parents. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.